Senator Estrada, Senator Gatchalian, Senator Go, Senator Hontiveros, Senator Lacson, Senator Lapid, Senator Legarda, Senator Marcoleta, Senator Marcos, Senator Padilla, Senator Pangilinan, Senator Tulfo Erwin, Senator Tulfo Rafi, Senator Villanueva, Senator Villar Camil, Senator Villar Mark, Senator Subiri. The Senate President is present.
With 18 senators present, the chair declares the presence of a quorum. Majority Leader.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Mr. President, before we start our day today, we would just like to greet a very happy birthday to our distinguished colleague, Senator Risa Ontiveros, Mr. President. We'd like to greet her happy birthday. May I ask for a minute suspension so we can approach her, Mr. President?
Session suspended.
Mr. President. Mr. President, today we have a lot of guests in the gallery. We have with us guests of Senator Lauren Legarda, local officials of DAPA, Surigao del Norte, led by Mayor Abeth Matugas is here with us today. We also have guests of Senator J.V. Arcito, Board Member Sonia Pablo and of the 2nd District of Occidental Mindoro, and Mayor Sunny Pablo of Rizal Occidental Mindoro. We also have guests of Senator Sherwin Gatchalian, municipal councilors from Santo Tomas, Pangasinan. We have also guests of the Senate President, Mr. President. Your guests, the Bagong Buhay Masonic Lodge number 17. We also have guests of Senator Kiko Pangilinan, the National Movement of Young Legislators from Isabela are here today. We also have other guests of Senator J.V. Arcito, the Transport Network Vehicle Service, the NVS, headed by Newell Edward Garcia, and the United Transportation Coalition Philippines, headed by Liza Redulla. And we have also the Basit family from Pampanga that are here with us, together with the local officials of the province of Tarlac, led by Vice Mayor Francis Candelario, and the guests of Senator Estrada, local officials from Rizal Mindoro, led by Mayor Ernesto Pablo and Vice Mayor John Paul Lim of Maho Masbate. And we also have my guest, Mr. President, from Claver, Surigao del Norte, Mayor Georgia Gokiaki, and Vice Mayor Lea Patan, and all their barangay officials, Mr. President, are here visiting us from all the way from Surigao del Norte, Claver, Mr. President. And finally, guest of Senator Villanueva, we have here with us His Excellency, Australian Ambassador to the Philippines, Mark Innes Brown, sir, with us today. And Mr. James Lawler, Secretary for the Embassy, Mr. President, the Australian Embassy.
Yes,
They're here
thank
with
you.
us today.
Thank you, Majority Leader. I would like to welcome His Excellency Mark Innes Brown, the Australian Ambassador Thank you for joining us this afternoon together with your officials of the Australian Embassy. And all the other guests that were mentioned by the Majority Leader, thank you and good
Thank you.
afternoon to you all.
Yes, we're a full house, Mr. President, and we welcome them all to their Senate, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move that we dispense with the reading of the Journal of the 47th Session, Monday, February 23, 2026, and consider the same as approved.
Any objection? Chair is none. The journal is approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move that we proceed with the reference of business.
Secretary will proceed with the reference of business.
Messages from the House of Representatives. Letter from the House of Representatives informing the Senate that 11 February 2026 passed the following bills in which it requests the concurrence of the Senate. House Bill number 6904, an act granting the Exodus Broadcasting Company Incorporated a franchise to construct, install, establish, operate, and maintain radio and television stations in the Philippines.
Deferred to Committee on Public Services.
7301, an act declaring the month of April every year as a Philippine Veterans Month.
Referred to Committee on National Defense and Security.
7303, an act declaring December 12 of every year as a Feast of Our Lady of Guadalupe Day.
To the Committee on Culture and the Arts.
7304, an act honoring the unsung heroes of electrification by proclaiming the first Monday of August of every year as National Line Workers Appreciation Day.
To the Committee on Energy.
7368, an act declaring November 30 of every year as Jesus Reigns National Day of Worship.
Referred to Committee on Culture.
7379, an act declaring December 19 of every year as a National Masonic Day.
Referred to Committee on Culture.
2671, an act naming the road commencing from Barangay San Juan at Ormoc City Diversion Road, traversing Barangay San Juan, Lao, Naungan, and joins the Naungan Coastal Road in the city of Ormoc, province of Leyte as the Dr. Dominador Gomez Diversion Road.
To the Committee on Public Works.
3002, an act naming the road commencing at Junction Palumpon, Merita, Isabel Ormoc Road in the Barangay Libertad and traversing Barangay Salvacion and Dehagan up to Junction Palo, Cariaga, Ormoc Road in the city of Ormoc, province of Leyte as the Dr. Mayo Rodriguez Avenue.
To the Committee on Public Works.
6914, an act renewing for another 25 years the franchise granted to Central Mindanao University under Republic Act number 9044 entitled an act granting the Central Mindanao University a franchise to construct, install, establish, operate, and maintain for education and non-commercial purposes radio and television broadcasting station in Central Mindanao University, Municipality of Maramag, Province of Bukidnon.
To the Committee on Public Services.
Letter from the House of Representatives informing the Senate on 18 February 2026 passed the following House bills in which it requests the concurrence of the Senate. House Bill number 7565, an act mandating the proper installation and maintenance of overhead electric distribution, communication lines, instructions by all electric distribution, cable, and telecommunication companies for purposes of public safety and good housekeeping.
Referred to Committees on Public Services and Public Works.
7639, an act renewing for another 25 years the franchise granted to Visayan Electric Company Incorporated under Republic number 9339 for conveyance of electric power to the end users in the city of Cebu, Mandaue, Talisay, and Naga, in the municipalities of Mingalilla, San Fernando, Consolacion, and Liloan, Province of Cebu.
To the Committee on Public Services.
142, an act declaring February 13 of every year a special non-working holiday in the city of Parañaque, Metro Manila, amending for the purpose of Republic number 11460. 761, an act declaring January 16 every year a special non-working holiday in the municipality of Tapa, province of Surigao del Norte, in celebration of the feast of its patron saint, the Holy Santo Niño. 762, an act declaring June 17 every year a special non-working holiday in the city of Lapu-Lapu, province of Cebu, in commemoration of Charter Anniversary. 1510, an act declaring July 15 every year a special non-working holiday in the whole Cordillera region in commemoration of its anniversary to be known as Cordillera Day. 1538, an act declaring June 9 of every year a special non-working holiday in the municipality of Rosario, province of Batangas, in celebration of its founding anniversary. 1539, an act declaring November 11 of every year a special non-working holiday in the municipality of Taysan, province of Batangas, in celebration of its foundation anniversary. 2902, an act declaring February 14 of every year a special non-working public holiday in the municipality of Calamba, province of Misamis Occidental, commemorate the Araw ng Calamba. 7554, an act declaring December 19 of every year a special non-working holiday in the city of Muntinlupa to be known as the Muntinlupa Foundation Day, and by for this purpose is Public Act Number 9191, otherwise known as an act declaring the first day of March of every year as a special non-working holiday in the city of Muntinlupa to be known as the Muntinlupa City Charter Day. 7555, an act declaring September 6 of every year a special non-working holiday in the city of Mendez Nunez, province of Cavite, commemorates its founding anniversary.
Referred to the Committee on Local Government.
Letter from the House of Representatives informing the Senate on 11 February 2026, designated Senator Gato Jr., Veloso, Aquino Magsaysay, Hofer Hasim, Cruz APA, Arbizon Jr., and Subiri as conferees to the Bicameral Conference Committee on the application of House Bill number 6739, titled "An Converting Dr. Eva Macaraig Macapagal National Center for Geriatric Health under the Jose R. Reyes Memorial Medical Center as a Dr. Eva Macaraig Macapagal National Center for Geriatric Health and Research Institute to define its powers and functions in Republic 504." And Senate Bill number 1509, an act establishing the Philippine Geriatric Center, defining its purposes, objectives, and creating funds therefore.
Referred to the Committee on Rules.
Committee reports. Committee report number 30, prepared and submitted by the Committee on Foreign Relations on PS Resolution number 315, titled Resolution concurring the ratification of the treaty between the government of the Republic of the Philippines and the government of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland on the transfer of sentenced persons. Recommending its approval without amendment by Senator Tulfo.
To the calendar for ordinary business.
Committee report number 31, prepared and submitted jointly with the Committees on Higher, Technical, and Voice Accreditation and Finance, and Senate Bill number 1894, with Senators Cayetano P., Aquino, Go, Escudero, Legarda, Estrada, Ontiveros, Villanueva, and Ercito as authors thereof, titled "An Act Enhancing the Universal Access to Quality Tertiary Education Act," amending for the purpose of Public Act Number 10931, recommending its approval on the distribution of Senate numbers 26, 130, 169, 503, 514, 1042, 1245, 1604, and 1620 by Senator Legarda.
To the calendar for ordinary business. There is additional reference to business or later? Later? All right. So, Majority Leader?
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Mr. President, to allow we'd like to ask the permission of the body to allow our colleague, Senator Pia Cayetano, to deliver a privileged speech and avail of the privilege hour, as she will be delivering a speech on rare diseases. And she has patients here today with special needs para po mauna na po ang privileged speech ng ating mahal na kapatid na si Senator Pia Cayetano. May we recognize her, Mr. President, to avail of the privilege hour.
Yes, of course. If there is no objection, we will proceed with the privilege hour earlier, and therefore Senator Pia Cayetano is recognized. You may deliver.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I rise on a matter of personal and collective privilege. We celebrate the 10th anniversary of the Rare Disease Act, Republic Act 10747. Meron tayong mga sound. Pwede bang, may we ask, merong, I don't know kung YouTube yun or...
May we ask the other members to adjourn their meeting so that the Senator Pia Cayetano can be heard by everyone?
Thank you, Mr. President. Meron pa rin eh. Thank you. We celebrate the 10th anniversary of the Rare Disease Act, Republic Act 10747, which I sponsored on November 5, 2015. We need stronger implementation, my dear colleagues, which is why I'm standing up today before all of you. Under Presidential Proclamation 1989, series of 2010, we observe the last week of every February as National Rare Disease Week, culminating in Global Rare Disease Day on the final day of the month, February 28. Let me define rare disease. It is It refers to disorders such as inherited metabolic disorders and other diseases with similar rare occurrences as recognized by the DOH under recommendation of the UP National Institute of Health. It does not include catastrophic and life-threatening forms of frequently occurring diseases. So let's emphasize, rare nga po ito. Hindi ito yung madalas natin nakikita. I have pictures here of persons who have the rare diseases, but I'll tell you more about it later on. The theme for the 2026 Rare Disease Week, More Than You Can Imagine, reminds us that while these conditions of individuals are rare, the community is massive. Globally, the World Health Organization estimates that over 300 million people worldwide live with approximately 7,000 types of rare diseases. And these are the rare diseases that have been diagnosed. Napakarami po, Mr. President, that are not diagnosed. And what's even sadder is it may be diagnosed but there is no cure. Or there is a cure but the pharmaceutical companies would not invest in it because konti lang ang may sakit. So wala silang return of investment para sa mga taong ganito. So napakalungkot talaga, Mr. President, when we understand the condition that persons with rare diseases have to live with. What is very heartbreaking is 70% of patients are children, according to the WHO. In the Philippines, we recognize some 6,500 individuals with rare diseases. We believe that there are many, many more, but they remain undiagnosed, Mr. President. These 6,500 alone have 159 known conditions identified by the UP National Institute of Health. In 2025, the 78th World Health Assembly adopted a historic resolution co-sponsored by the Philippines, recognizing rare diseases as a global health priority and adopting a 10-year global action plan. This plan includes integrating rare disease management within universal health care, ending the long and difficult journey of rare disease patients to receive accurate diagnosis through expanded genetic testing, and fostering international research and data sharing. Joining us today, Mr. President, is my hero. His name is Dicoy Magdaraog. He's in the back in a wheelchair. Dicoy, welcome. I think he's been here maybe 4 or 5 times. We have invited him as a guest many times. He is now a patient advocate for the Philippine Society for Orphan Disorders. He has been living with Pompe's disease, which causes muscle weakness that worsens over time. But Mr. President, Dicoy's story is inspirational. I don't remember the exact details, but he was told, his parents were told that he wouldn't live past a certain age. But he actually ended up finishing college and he is gainfully employed. He works for the Asian Development Bank and is proof that with the right support, people with rare diseases can lead productive and impactful lives. Beyond his job, Mr. President, he is a thriving entrepreneur. Later on in the lounge, I brought his product called Decoys. Many of you have probably tried it. It's a chicken pie na napakasarap. And my other favorite is choco key lime pie. This is a business he developed during the pandemic. And beyond that, kung may mga watch collectors dyan, he is a watch reseller. So talagang ang dami niyang entrepreneurial skills despite his physical limitations. His experience during the pandemic is worth noting, Mr. President, because he almost died. In the first year of the pandemic, he had problems getting his treatment and medication. What he normally would receive twice a month, he was only able to get 4 times throughout the year. Missing his regular treatment cost him his ability to use his hands. Naka-wheelchair na nga po siya. He needs assistance to breathe na wala pa yung kanyang ability to use his hands. Pre-pandemic, he used a motorized wheelchair with a joystick, but after not receiving his treatment regularly, he lost the ability to drive this and now relies on external help. So Decoy is just one of the examples of our heroes who live with rare diseases. His mom was the patient advocate when she first came here with Dr. Menchit Padilla, the specialist who was advocating for the rare disease bill. But I'll go back into a little bit of history. My seatmate is not here, but I'm about to mention her. In 2004, the Senate passed the Newborn Screening Act. Senator Lauren was one of the sponsors, and my late father was an incumbent senator then. I mention him because the proponent of the bill, Dr. Menchit Padilla, who was then head of the NIH, was my doctor because I had a baby who in utero was diagnosed with trisomy 13. I was told to see a geneticist when I returned to the Philippines if I wanted to understand the condition of my son, the life expectancy, and so on and so forth. I did not even know that the term rare disease existed, and I didn't know until years later when I was a senator that his condition was actually called a rare disease. At that time, when I met Dr. Menchit Padilla, I was probably 7 months or 8 months pregnant with my son, and we were able to determine, to confirm what I learned in the US, that he had trisomy 13. What that means is, in a normal human being, you have 23 pairs of each chromosome. Sorry, a pair of 23 chromosomes. So that's 23 times 2, 46. My son had 3 of chromosome 13. That's why the condition is called trisomy 13. Tatlo yon. So yung total chromosomes niya is not 46 but 47. And in the case of my son, he was born, he was perceived to be blind and deaf, with a hole in his heart, with tumors in his kidney. He had the 6th finger. I was told he would never walk or talk. Those are the manifested conditions of his rare disease, which I only found out later, as I said, was called a rare disease. So anyway, when I met her, we talked about this bill that was pending in the Senate, and that was the Newborn Screening Act. And the importance of this is that upon birth, the infants would be given screening, and this screening would detect many conditions that could save their lives. So she said, baka pwede mong banggitin yan sa daddy mo kasi senator siya. Sabi ko, of course, I will tell my father and I'm sure he will support. So di ko na yan nasubaybayan, basta nalaman ko na lang pumasa yan. Years later, who would have thought that I would become a senator and I would have the privilege of working with Dr. Padilla again, and this time on her new baby, the rare disease bill. When I was working on it, that's the only time that I Googled and found out that my son's condition was considered a rare disease. So akala nung mga bago kong staff, inspiration nung bill is my son. No, ang inspiration ko was decoy. Na taon lang na yun din pala ang category ng sakit ng anak ko. So, we passed this landmark bill, like I said, in 2016, so it's been 2 years, and this has really been a game changer in paper and in principle if we are able to implement what the law indicates there. So let me run through this, Mr. President. A person with a rare disease should be able to have access to a PhilHealth package, which includes, of course, the newborn screening that I had earlier mentioned. This is able to detect 28 plus congenital or metabolic disorders. It also includes the Z benefit package for 10 rare diseases currently, and it includes Pompe disease, which as I mentioned, Decoy has, and maple syrup urine disease. It also includes medical assistance to indigent and financially incapacitated patients. The law also requires that we continue to advocate continuing education for our health providers because they are the first line of defense. If they cannot spot this, if they cannot refer the patient to a specialist who can provide more in-depth examination, then that window to provide help might be lost. So we need to continue to provide this kind of support. So where are we now? As Senior Vice Chairman as the Committee on Finance, we have continually worked with the advocates to provide budgets for rare diseases and the newborn screening program. In 2024, DOH reported the country reached 96.8% coverage, representing 1.2 million 1.20 million over 1.35 million newborns, meaning to say, dumaan sila sa newborn screening. So 96.8% is very high. Sana tuloy-tuloy po yun. And then, currently, we have 4,106 newborn screening facilities. So, hindi lahat ng health center may newborn screening facility. We currently have 4,000. I think we can afford to have more, but what is also important is that educated yung mga health professionals natin manning these places. The UPNIH budget for newborn screening reference centers, this is an office under the UPNIH that provides technical assistance to the DOH in reaching the ultimate goal of screening Filipino newborns for common life-threatening heritable disorders. We have also put in budget every year for this. Hindi naman ho napakalaki, 20 million, 28 million, may taon lang na 5 million, hindi naman napakalaki. So we just really want to make sure that this program is successful. Finally, I'd like to connect this to the SDGs. As party to the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development Goals, particularly SDG 3 on good health and well-being, the idea is to increase our efforts to address a wide range of diseases. According to the WHO, the vision of the Sustainable Development Goals is a world in which no one is left behind, including people who suffer from rare diseases. The topic of rare diseases is of paramount importance and often overlooked in the realm of public health. To conclude, as we mark the 10th anniversary of the Rare Disease Act, let us strengthen our shared resolve. We must build on the principle of equality and inclusivity, ensuring that our healthcare system is responsive to the needs of all individuals. There is much more we can do to show our solidarity for patients with rare diseases and their families and friends who stay by their side to support and care for them. Through greater awareness and action, we can provide not only better healthcare services for rare disease patients, but also a more nurturing world for them to live in. Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, dear colleagues.
Majority Leader.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. We'd like to thank the distinguished lady for a very timely speech, being that today is the anniversary of rare diseases, the day of rare diseases. So we'd like to refer the speech of the Honorable Lady to the Committee on Health and Demography. I so move, Mr. President.
So referred to the Committee on Health.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I'll take this opportunity while we have a lot of number of senators that are here today. We'd just like to remind the chairpersons on the priority measures. Some of those who were not able to attend the all-members caucus yesterday, maybe I'd just like to put on record here and remind them to please work on the measures of their committee, and then we can tackle it on plenary, Mr. President. Thank you. Mr. President, we'd like to also recognize guests of Senator Ontiveros and Pangilinan. Kiko Pangilinan is A.J. Kalinga Foundation, led by Randy De Los Santos and Tessam Castillo. Together with, we also have with us today, University of Cordillera students, together with Judge Isagani G. Calderon, are here with us in the Senate, Mr. President. We welcome them to the Senate.
Welcome to the Senate.
Thank you. Mr. President, moving forward with our agenda, I move that we resume consideration of Senate Bill number 1823 under Committee Report number 29. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, consideration of 1823 is in order.
Thank you, Mr. President. The status of the measure is that we're in the period of interpellation. We received a message from Senator, our distinguished Minority Floor Leader, that he will no longer interpellate me on this measure. We thank the good Minority Floor Leader for this, and I'm sure he wants to see that the elections also be scheduled immediately, Mr. President. So I move that we close the period of interpellation for Senate Bill number 1823.
Any objection? Hearing none, period of interpellation is closed.
Mr. President, may we move to the period of amendment with the permission of the body.
Hearing no objection, we are now in the period of amendments. You may proceed, Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just move to the other podium, Mr. President. We can do this page by page, Mr. President, with your permission.
Yes, of course. The best way to do it. With the period of amendment, start with page 1. Any amendments on page 1?
May I just ask for a 10-second, okay, I need a copy of the bill. I have nothing. Thank you. Mr. President, on page 1, on page 1, we propose line 7, we propose amendments on line 7 after the word 2026. May ulterior amendment na po. Page 7, after the word 2026, delete the comma and the phrase "and every 3 years thereafter," and replace it with the following paragraph. The term of office of the members of the parliament elected in the first BARM regular elections shall be from noon of the 30th day of October 2026 until noon of the 30th day following the second regular election in the BARM parliament. I so move, Mr. President.
Is that all? Don't you want to continue? The second
That's Senator
paragraph?
Lacso's amendment, Mr. President. I'll let him do the honor of his amendment.
All right, so any objection to that particular amendment? Hearing none, the amendment is adopted.
Thank you, Mr. President. I believe our distinguished colleague, the Senate President Pro Tempore, has an amendment.
President Pro Temp is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. That is exactly my amendment, but I will just complete the whole paragraph or the whole section, Mr. President. Yeah, on the same page, line 8, after the period, insert the following words and phrases to wit. No? The term of office of those elected during this election shall start at noon on the first day of December 2026 and shall end at noon on the 30th day of June 2031, period. Beginning 2031, comma, for purposes of synchronizing the Bangsamoro elections with the national and local elections, comma, the regular elections for the Bangsamoro government shall be held on the second Monday of May 2031 and every 3 years thereafter. The whole section as amended will now read as follows, if I may, Mr. President.
You will be reading the entire amendment from line 7 or just the proposal that you are mentioning?
It's better that I read the whole section 1, Mr. President.
Read the entire section 1. All right, go ahead, then the sponsor is listening.
Yes, Section 1, Section 13, Article 16 of Republic Act Number 11054, otherwise known as the Organic Law for the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao, as amended, is hereby amended to read as follows. Section 13, first regular session. The first regular session for the Bangsamoro government under this organic law shall be held on the second Monday of September 2026, period. The term of office of those elected during this election shall start at noon on the first day of December 2026 and shall end at noon on the 30th day of June 2031, beginning 2031, comma, for purposes of synchronizing the Bangsamoro elections with the national and local elections, comma, the regular elections for the Bangsamoro government shall be held on the second Monday of May 2031 and every 3 years thereafter, period.
What does the sponsor say? That is completely different from
May I ask for
your
a minute
amendment.
suspension, Mr. President?
Yes, session suspended.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, Senator Lacson and I are going to refine our amendments. So with this permission, we agreed that we will withdraw first our amendments on Section 1 and come back to it later once our staff and our two offices have refined the amendments, Mr. President.
So, all right. So do I understand that your motion is to withdraw both amendments?
Yes, sir.
The ones that we have approved and the one that is
marry them
pending?
both
To marry
properly.
them both, yes.
Yes.
So any objection? Hearing none, the amendments are withdrawn.
Thank you, Mr. President. Move to suspend temporarily the consideration until we can come up with the wordings on the amendments.
Any objection? Hearing none, consideration of the measure is suspended.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move that we proceed with the second reference of business.
Additional reference of business, you would want
Sponsorship.
additional first, and then the second additional.
Yes, sir.
All right, you may proceed. The Secretary.
Additional reference of business, bills on first reading. Senate Bill number 1880, and creating a mandatory position for human resource management officer in local government units, amending for the purpose sections 443, 454, and 463 of Republic Act number 7160 of the Local Government Code of 1991 as amended by Senator Villar M.
Referred to committees on local government and civil service.
1881, anak regulating the registration, licensure, and practice of physical therapy and appropriating funds therefore by Senator Villar M.
Referred to the committees on civil service and finance.
1882, anak establishing a national youth environmental advocacy and sustainable program and appropriating funds therefore by Senator Villar M.
To the committees on youth, environment, and finance.
1883, anak allowing the free use of public places available for art exhibits of local artists by Senator Villar M.
To the committees on culture, the arts, and finance.
1884, anak establishing nursery and childcare facilities proximate to public schools, promoting access to affordable childcare facilities for public school teachers by Senator Villar M.
To the committees on women, ways and means, and finance.
1885, anak declared the whole month of July of every year as a micro, small, and medium enterprises month in the entire country and appropriating funds therefore by Senator Villar M.
To the committees on trade and finance.
1886, anak to establish a grant program to provide vision care to children by Senator Villar M.
To the committee on health.
1887, anak mandating all government agencies to post and display national symbols and figures and instill Filipino youth awareness and patriotism by Senator Villar M.
To the committees on youth, civil service, and finance.
1888, anak creating an advanced studies development program for exceptional government employees by Senator Villar M.
To the committees on higher education, civil service, and finance.
1889, anak granting amnesty in the payment of estate tax by Senator Lacson.
Referred to committee on ways and means.
1890, anak amending Republic Act number 11313, in that anak refining gender-based sexual harassment in streets, public spaces, online workspaces, places, education or training institution, providing protective measures, describing penalties for the party purpose of Senator Padilla.
Referred to committees on women and justice.
1891, anak institutionalizing and strengthening the National Cybersecurity Interagency Committee created under Executive Order number 95, Series 2019, renaming to National Cybersecurity Council in party purposes by Senator Marcos.
To the committees on science and technology, civil service, and finance.
1892, anak extending the prescribed period of offenses under the Violence Against Women and the Children Act, the crime of rape and the crimes characterized as crimes against chastity under Title 11 of Vice Penal Code, amending for the purpose Section 24, Republic Act number 9262, otherwise known as Anti-Violence Against Women and Children Act of 2004, in Article 90 of the Vice Penal Code as amended by Senator Marcos.
Referred to committees on women and justice.
1893, anak exempting the Philippine film and movie industry from the payment of certain taxes, amending for the purpose certain provisions of the Republic number 8424, otherwise known as the National Internal Revenue Code of the Philippines as amended, and RA number 10863, otherwise known as the Customs Modernization Tariff Act, and for other purposes by Senator Marcos.
To the committee on ways and means.
1895, anak establishing a private basic education voucher program, repealing sections 2, 3, 4, 43, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 1, 4, and 15 of Public Act Number 8545, otherwise known as the Expanded Component Assistance to Students and Teachers in Private Education Act, which amended Public Act Number 6728, appropriating funds for Senate 24R.
The Committees on Basic Education, Ways and Means, and Finance.
1896, anak abolishing the travel tax, Senator Gatchalian.
To the Committees on Ways and Means, Tourism, and Finance.
1897, anak amending Republic Act Number 10591 as amended, otherwise known as the Comprehensive Firearms and Ammunition Regulation Act by Senator Subiri.
Committees on Public Order and Ways and Means.
1898, anak declaring Rasa Island, located in the municipality of Nara, province of Palawan, a protected area by the category of wildlife sanctuary under National Integrated Protected Area System, to refer to as Rasa Island Wildlife Sanctuary, providing for its management and operating funds for by Senator Subiri.
Referred to Committees on Environment, Ways and Means, and Finance.
Resolutions. Resolution number 314, resolution directing the Appropriate Senate Committee to conduct an inquiry into the legislation and the recent incident of drunk driving and increasing numbers of road-related accidents with any view reviewing existing laws on road safety by Sir Villar M.
The Committee on Public Services.
316, resolution directing the Appropriate Senate Committee to conduct inquiry into the legislation and the status of integrated legislation program of the Bureau of Internal Revenue as amended with Republic Act Number 11976 or the Ease of Paying Taxes Act by Senator Gatchalian.
The Committee on Ways and Means and Finance.
Committee report. Committee report number 32, prepared and submitted by the Committee on Basic Education, so Senate number 1899, with Senators Legarda, Gatchalian, Aquino as authors hereof, titled Anak allowing the Department of Education the flexibility to determine the pedagogical approaches to be implemented in the basic education curriculum, amending the purpose, Section 5, Public Number 10533, or the Enhanced Basic Education Act 2013, recommending the approval and institution of Senate numbers 530 and 624, take into consideration House Bill number 5939 by Senator Aquino.
To the calendar for ordinary business, there is a second additional reference of business. Committee report, you may proceed.
Second District of Business, Committee Report. Committee Report number 33, prepared and submitted jointly by the Committees on Electoral Reforms and People's Participation and Constitutional Amendments and Revision of Codes on Senate Bill number 1901 with Senators Padilla, Lacson, Pangilinan, Tiberos, Aquino, Ejercito, Legarda, and Tulfo E. as authors for titled An Act Prohibiting Political Dynasties in National and Local Elective Offices and Party Lists and providing penalties for the company's approval and justice of Senate Bill number 18, 35, 285, 1548, 1558, 1616, and 1854 by Senator Tiberos.
To the calendar for ordinary business. Majority Leader.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move that we consider or to move to transfer from the calendar of ordinary business to special order Senate Bill number 1901 under Committee Report number 33. I so move.
Any objection? Hearing none. Consideration? So transferred.
Mr. President, move that we consider Senate Bill number 1901 under Committee Report number 33. So move.
Any objection? Hearing none. Consideration is in order.
May we recognize, we ask the Senate Secretary to read the title.
Secretary will read the title of the measure.
An Act Prohibiting Political Dynasties in National and Local Elective Offices and Party Lists and providing penalties for.
Mr. President, may we recognize a distinguished sponsor for the measure, no other than Senator Risa Ontiveros, our birthday girl, Mr. President.
Senator Risa Ontiveros is recognized to sponsor the measure.
Salamat po, Mr. President. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, mga kasama, mga kababayan, may mga panahon sa ating trabaho dito sa lehislatura na hindi lang tayo gumagawa ng panukala. Tayo ay tumutugon sa kasaysayan. Tayo ay sumusunod sa atas ng ating saligang batas. The 1987 Constitution declares that the state shall guarantee equal access to opportunities for public service and prohibit political dynasties as may be defined by law. Ito ay malinaw na utos ng saligang batas. The Constitution says it in black letter. The framers, bless their long lives and their stamina in attending our committee hearings, confirm it. And yet, for nearly 40 years, that constitutional command has remained unfulfilled. In the 20th Congress, before the Filipino people, we, dear colleagues, are given the opportunity to decide whether we will give life to that promise. Mr. President, sa araw pong ito, I am honored and deeply humbled to sponsor Committee Report Number 33 in substitution of Senate Bills 18, 35, 285, 1548, 1558, 1616, and 1854, sponsored by Senators Padilla, Lacson, Erwin Tulfo, Pangilinan, Ejercito, Aquino, and Legarda, at ang inyong lingkod. Ito ay produkto ng mga committee hearings natin sa Senado, mga consultations na ginanap sa iba't ibang rehiyon sa Pilipinas, at mga komento at suhestyon ng mga eksperto at karaniwang Pilipino. Nadinig natin ang suporta ng mga estudyante, mga manggagawa, at mga local government officials. At atin ding pinakinggan ang agam-agam ng mga may pagkiling sa dinastiya sa kung anumang dahilan. But let us speak plainly. Political dynasties are not only a political issue, they are an economic issue. Studies by the Ateneo de Manila University, the University of the Philippines, and reputable think tanks have consistently shown a correlation between entrenched dynasties and higher poverty incidence, weaker human development outcomes, and slower local economic growth. Sa mga lugar kung saan umiikot lamang sa iilang pamilya ang kapangyarihan, malimit, mas mataas ang kahirapan. Mas mahina ang mobility, mas limitado ang oportunidad. Why? Because competition disciplines power. Kapag masikip ang pintuan papasok sa politika, masikip din ang daloy ng ideya, reforma, at oportunidad. Walang incentive para maging achiever, maging magaling at masinop na lingkod bayan, kasi nga naman, pasa-pasa lang. The position becomes a birthright and not something to fight for. We must also address corruption. When several members of one family simultaneously hold office across a province, city, or municipality, accountability becomes complicated. Hindi ito pag-aakusang may mali agad. Ngunit aminin man natin o hindi, may structural incentive for mutual protection. Oversight weakens when authority circulates within the same family network. Investigations can become politically fraught. Local institutions may hesitate. Hindi po pwedeng sabihin na mabait naman si governor, wala naman dungis si mayor. Democracy does not depend on personal virtue alone. It depends also on institutional safeguards. We want those institutional safeguards. Dear colleagues, we understand the sensitivity of this measure. Many of us come from families with long traditions of public service. Totoo po, marami sa mga pamilyang nasa politika ay naglilingkod ng marangal at may dangal. This bill is not about attacking families or questioning anyone's long tradition of public service. That tradition itself shows that public service can be honorable. But today is about institutional legacy. Kung hindi natin kikilalanin ang utos ng konstitusyon ngayon, kailan pa? If we truly believe in equal access to public service, then we must create rules that widen access. The bill is not an assault on political families and those who belong in them. What it does is prevent simultaneous concentration of power within the same family in the same sphere of governance. Mr. President, dear colleagues, we acknowledge that people have varying ideas of what a perfect anti-dynasty bill would look like. Some bills were expansive in theory, but impossible to implement. Some extended prohibition so broadly that verification would overwhelm our electoral system. We listened to the Commission on Elections, and the COMELEC has been clear. Enforceability is essential. That is why this bill limits the prohibition to relatives within the second degree of consanguinity or affinity and applies it within defined territorial jurisdictions. Ako man po ay tumalima dito, Mr. President, kahit ang sarili kong panukala ay hanggang fourth degree. This bill is at bottom a convergence of principle and practicality. A bill that can hopefully find consensus among the widest number of stakeholders, but at the same time, effect meaningful change. Hindi ito perpekto, ngunit ito ay posible. At ito ay makabuluhan. At sa politika, ang posible ngayon ang nagiging pundasyon ng mas malalim na reforma bukas. I stand before you today, Mr. President, believing deeply and truly that this is a bill that will create meaningful impact, not just for our democracy, but for ordinary Filipinos. Ito ay panig sa kabataang may pangarap tumakbo, ngunit walang apelyidong kilala. Ito ay panig sa guro, sa negosyante, sa health worker, sa magsasaka na may kakayahan, ngunit walang politikal na makinarya. Ito ay panig sa patas na laban. Democracy survives not because power is comfortable, but because power is accountable. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, para sa isang kinabukasang puhunan ang kakayahan, hindi apelyido, with humility, with respect for this institution, and with fidelity to the Constitution, I respectfully sponsor this measure and urge its approval. Salamat po, Mr. President.
Thank you. Majority Leader.
Also to co-sponsor, Mr. President, the Senate bill is no other than our other Majority Floor Leader, Senator J.V. Harrison. Can we recognize him, Mr. President?
Senator J.B. Harrison is recognized. Co-sponsor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, esteemed colleagues, to the Filipino people, good afternoon. I rise today to sponsor Senate Bill number 1901 under Committee Report number 33 or the Anti-Political Dynasty Act. Kung mayroon man pong salitang naglalarawan sa araw na ito po ay historic, makasaysayan, nararapat at higit sa lahat napapanahon na. Bagamat kung susuriin natin mabuti, hindi lang ito napapanahon, ito ay matagal lang overdue. Some say we should focus on bigger problems like poverty, hunger, or the economy before tackling dynasties. But what many fail to see is that these problems are limbs of the same body. Our economic and social progress is being jeopardized by a system that has not benefited the Filipinos for a long time. The data speaks for itself. Reports by the Philippine Center for Investigative Journalism or PCIJ reveal a staggering reality. 71 out of the 82 provincial governments in our country are still held by members of the political families. Even more alarming is the rise of what experts call obese dynasties. Currently, at least 18 provinces fall under this category, where a single family fields 5 or more relatives simultaneously across different elective positions. Mr. President, sa ibang probinsya, ang gobyerno ay parang family business na pinakayaw na ang lahat ng posisyon. Congressman si Daddy, Governor si Mami, Vice Governor si Ate, Mayor sa isang bayan si Kuya at si Bunso inihahanda na bilang konsihal. Within the legislative branch, over half of district representatives seeking re-election belong to political dynasties. Moreover, the party list system intended to expand political representation has similarly been captured by dynastic interests, with 78 of 156 party list organizations associated with political dynasties. Furthermore, the share of provincial governors, House members, and mayors from political dynasties rose from 57%, 48%, and 40% in 2004 to 80%, 67%, and 53% in 2025, reflecting the growing concentration of political power within a few families. Mr. President, when public office becomes a family heirloom, the public part of the office begins to disappear. I support this measure not because it is a priority of this administration, nor because I have my own version of this bill. I support it because it is the only way to truly democratize public service. This bill pursues a clear, absolute definition of what a political dynasty is. It ensures that there are no sacred cows. No one, including this august chamber, is exempt. Some skeptics say this is an impossible feat. To them, I say, we have already done it. When we passed the Sangguniang Kabataan Reform Act, this representation introduced the first ever anti-dynasty provision in Philippine history. We saw how the SK, once a breeding ground for traditional politics and trapo practices, began to change. We proved that we could dismantle the system that taught our youth that political power is inherited rather than earned. It is worth noting that during that time, chairperson of the Senate Committee on Local Government who championed that reform was none other than then Senator and now President Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos Jr. Kaya naman po, hindi na ako nagulat na kanyang ginawang priority measure ang panukalang batas na ipinagbawal ang mga dinastiya. Mr. President, the time to pass this measure is not next year, not next term, but now. I would like to commend our colleague, Senator Risa Ontiveros, the chairperson on her birthday. Ngayon pong kaarawan niya, siya pa ang may regalo sa mga kababayan natin. There is perhaps no greater gift to the Filipino people than her dedication to this cause. She has listened to the aspirations of our constituents from across the islands, and those dreams are reflected in the bill we sponsor today. We did it with the SK Reform Law. We can do it again, this time on a larger scale, for a better platform and for the sake of our country's future. Power, whether political or economic, should be shared. Mr. President, walang sino mang pamilya ang dapat na magmonopolyo sa kapangyarihan. It is only when we are ready to share our power that we are truly ready to reap the blessings of democracy. Thank you, Mr. President.
Majority Leader.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Mr. President, to allow our colleagues to study this measure further.
Senator Padilla is
sorry.
raising his hand.
My apologies. Yes. Please, we recognize Senator Robin Hood Padilla.
Senator Robbie Padilla is recognized.
Maraming salamat po, Ginoong Pangulo, at sa ating pinunong mayorya. Ako po ay nababalot ng malalim na kasiyahan at kasayahan sapagkat noong pong 19th Congress, ito po ay ating isinusulong at kasama po natin dito yung mga orihinal na sumulat ng 1987 Constitution. Kasama po natin sila Atty. Christian Munsod. At tayo po ay nakagawa ng mga panukala na katulad po ng isinulong ng ating kaibigan at hinahanga ang Senadora Risa Ontiveros. Happy birthday, ma'am. At parehas po kami na 4th degree ang gusto namin. Marami pong nagtatanong sa akin, ako daw po mismo ay pamilya ng political dynasty. Totoo po yan. May kapatid po akong gobernor, may kapatid po akong mayor. Kami po ay dinastiya. Pero akin pong pinanghahawakan ay ang sinasabi ng 1987 Constitution. Yun po ang dapat nating sundin. Hindi ang sigaw ng ating damdamin, kung hindi ang sinasabi ng saligang batas. At kaya po tayo ay nagpapasalamat kay Senadora Risa Ontiveros sapagkat sa kanya pong pamumuno ay ito po ay mukhang papasa sapagkat ito po ay ibinalita sa atin ng ating mahal na Senate President na ito daw po ay kasama sa lidak. Ibig sabihin ay prioridad ng administrasyon at ng ating plenaryo. Ito po, mga mahal kong kababayan, ibig sabihin binibigyan na po natin ng pag-asa yung mga kababayan natin na mamuno rin. Hindi po pwede na sa ating populasyon na 117 million ay iilang pamilya lamang. Iilan lamang ang sinasabing may talino at galing para mamuno dito sa ating bayan. Ako po'y naniniwala na ito ang hakbang para magkaroon po tayo ng tunay na progreso sa bayan natin. Hindi ko po maipagkakaila, marami po akong mga kaibigan, malalapit sa akin, na meron po silang dinastiya na matitino naman at gumagana naman. Pero mas marami po yung mga dinastiya na masasabi nating pinagsasamantalahan ang ating inang bayan. Kaya po, mga mahal kong kababayan, tulad po ng aking laging sinasabi, ako po ay magiging ehemplo at unang tatalima kapag ito ay naging batas. Kahit nang ibig sabihin po nito ay ang pagbaba ko o ng aking mga kamag-anak sa pwesto. Maraming salamat po, Ginoong Pangulo.
Majority Leader.
Mr. President, thank you very much to distinguished colleague. Also for the record, the following, our colleague Senator Kiko Pangilinan would like to just insert into the records his co-sponsorship speech on Senate Bill number 1901. So, Mr. President.
So inserted.
Thank you, Mr. President. To allow our colleagues to study the measure further, I move that we suspend consideration of the measure.
Any objection? Hearing none, consideration is suspended.
Mr. President, I move that we take up the proposed Senate Resolution number 315 under Committee Report number 30. So move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, consideration of 315 is in order.
This is the ratification between our government and the government of United Kingdom and Great Britain. May we recognize the sponsor of the measure, Mr. President? Senator, before we do that, has it been read already by the Secretary yesterday? Yes. May we just ask the Secretary to read the title of the measure?
Yes, I think it's on in the agenda. So the
Yes.
Secretary will read the title of the measure without prejudice into inserting into the records the text of the said resolution.
Treaty between the Government of the Republic of the Philippines and the Government of the United Kingdom of Great Britain in Northern Ireland and the transfer of sentenced persons.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. We recognize the sponsor of the measure, the Chairman of the Committee on Foreign Relations, no other than Senator Erwin Tulfo.
Senator Erwin Tulfo, Chairman of the Committee on Foreign Relations, is recognized.
Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, I rise today to seek the concurrence of the Senate on a vital international agreement, the treaty between the Republic of the Philippines and the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland on the transfer of sentenced persons. Ang karapatang pantao at ang dignidad ng bawat isa ay nanatili, nasa loob man sila o sa labas ng rehas. Sa ilalim po ng ating saligang batas, hindi natatapos ang pagkalinga ng pamahalaan sa isang Pilipino dahil lamang siya ay nakagawa ng pagkakamali sa ibang bansa. The core of this treaty is restorative justice. It is explicitly stated in the treaty that sentenced person shall be treated with respect for their human rights. When a Filipino is imprisoned in a foreign land like the United Kingdom, they face more than just the loss of liberty. Bukod sa rehas, meron ding pader ng wika at distansya mula sa kanyang pamilya. Dobleng pasakit po, Ginoong Pangulo. Ang kasunduang ito ay magpapadali sa epektibong rehabilitasyon ng ating mga kababayan sapagkat sila ay mapapalapit sa kanilang mga pamilya at kaibigan. Makakasama rin nila ang kapwa bilanggo na may kaparehong wika at kultura. Nevertheless, Mr. President, it is not get out of jail free card. It is a transfer of venue where the Filipino will serve his sentence. It will be operationalized through the following mechanism. Number one, mutual consent. The transfer requires the consent of both the Philippines and United Kingdom governments, as well as the written consent of the sentenced person. Dapat po pumayag din po yung mga bilanggo. Halimbawa po yung mga Pilipino na nakakulong po doon na pumayag siyang pabalik po dito. Ewan ko kung papayag po talaga. Number two, sentence continuity. The sentence imposed in the UK will be carried out in the Philippines. We respect the judicial sovereignty of UK while taking over custodial responsibility. Number three, the Department of Justice Oversight, the DOJ, will be the lead implementing agency in coordinating with UK authorities to ensure the safe and orderly transfer of our nationals to local penal institutions. Mr. President, naniniwala tayo na ang layunin ng pagkabilanggo ay pagbabago, hindi pagpapahirap. Ipakita natin sa ating mga kababayan sa United Kingdom na hindi sila nakakalimutan ng kanilang inang bayan. Tayo ay magtulungan para sa kabutihan ng ating bayan. For this reason, I urge this body to concur with the ratification of this treaty. Thank you, Mr. President.
The,
Mr. President,
Senator Padilla is raising his hand. What is the pleasure? What is the pleasure of Senator Padilla?
Nais ko lamang po, Ginoong Pangulo, magbigay ng suporta sapagkat bilang ako po ay dating bilanggo, naiintindihan ko po ang pinangusap ng ating mahal na kaibigan na Senator Erwin Tulfo.
Go ahead. Go ahead. You may proceed.
Ginoong Pangulo at mga kagalang-galang ko mga kasama sa Senado, ako po'y tumatayo upang buong puso na mag-co-sponsor po sa inyo pong resolusyon.
Salamat po.
Sapagkat ito pong kasunduang ito ay nagbibigay ng malinaw na mekanismo upang ang mga Pilipinong nahatulan sa United Kingdom ay maaaring mailipat sa Pilipinas upang dito ipagpatuloy ang pagsisilbi ng kanilang sintensya. Binabati ko po ang kabuuan ng Senate Committee on Foreign Relations sa pamumuno ni Senador Erwin Tulfo sa masusing pag-aaral at pagsusuri ng kasunduang ito. Naniniwala po ang inyong lingkod na higit sa isang diplomatikong kasunduan, ito ay isang makataong hakbang sapagkat napakahirap po na mabilanggo sa isang malayong lugar. Dito nga lang po sa Pilipinas, nakikita po natin yung mga kababayan natin na mga tawid dagat na hirap na hindi nakikita ang kanilang mga kamag-anak. Lalo na po sa ibang lugar, sa malayong lugar at sa ibang bansa. Mga mahalagang konsiderasyon po para sa tunay na rehabilitasyon at reintegrasyon sa lipunan. Tama po kayo, Senator Erwin Tulfo. Dito nga po sa atin, Bureau of Correction na, hindi na New Bilibid Prison. Ang atin pong isinusulong ay ang pagbabago ng tao. Pinagtitibay din po nito ang ating patuloy na paninindigan na pangalagaan ang kapakanan ng mga Pilipino sa ibayong dagat at palalimin na ugnayan sa United Kingdom. Maraming salamat po.
Majority Leader.
thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, to allow our colleagues to study the measure, move to suspend consideration of the same.
Any objection? Hearing none. Consideration is suspended.
Mr. President, I move that we consider Senate Bill number 8094 under Committee Report number 31. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none. Consideration of the measure is in order. The Secretary will read the title of the measure.
Enhancing the Universal Access to Quality Tertiary Education Act, amending for the purpose of Republic number 10931.
Mr. President, we recognize the sponsor of the measure, no other than a distinguished colleague, our Tita Ganda of the Senate, Senator Lauren Legarda.
Senator Lori Legarda is recognized.
Mr. President, esteemed colleagues, it is my distinct privilege to sponsor Senate Bill number 1894, a measure that strengthens Republic Act number 10931, otherwise known as the Universal Access to Quality Tertiary Education Act. We are a nation that tells its children ang edukasyon ang pinakadakilang daan tungo sa pagka-pantay-pantay. When we enacted this landmark law in 2017, we believed with full conviction that we were building the most consequential social investment of our generation. We were reaching into the lives of the most disadvantaged Filipino families and telling them, kaya ninyo, hindi kayo nag-iisa. Kaagapay ninyo ang pamahalaan. The tertiary education subsidy was meant to be our instrument of that promise. It was designed to prioritize the academically capable children of the poorest of the poor. Children for whom a college degree is not a matter of preference, but a doorway out of poverty and into dignity for their families, for the generations that follow. We meant it then, and we mean it now. Yet meaning something is not the same as delivering it. Our extensive assessments through the Second Congressional Commission on Education, EDCOM2, reveal that the reality on the ground has strayed far from the spirit of the law. In 2018, 74% of TESS grantees came from the 4Ps and listahanan, the poorest households the law was built for. By 2022, that figure had collapsed to just 30%. In contrast, the share of grantees classified as PNSL, those studying in private institutions in areas with no state or local university, rose dramatically from 26% in 2018 to 69% in 2022. This systemic barrier is most evident in the recent graduation data. In 2024, 384,388 students from 4Ps households completed senior high school. These are young Filipinos who, despite poverty, despite every obstacle stacked against them, have done everything right. They stayed in school. They finished. For many of them, graduation alone was already a miracle. Yet out of this number, only 4,746, or 1%, were able to access the tests as first-year college beneficiaries that same year. 1% lamang. And for those fortunate enough to qualify, the subsidy itself has been diminishing. In the program's first year, TESS stood at 60,000 pesos per year. Since then, it has been reduced to as low as 20,000 pesos. For grantees, that means 10,000 pesos per semester. Meanwhile, the cost of living continues to rise. Textbooks, transportation, board, and lodging must still be paid for. And so, one by one, students are pushed out of the very system that was built to keep them in. More than a funding problem, it is also a systemic failure. 10 years after the passage of Republic Act 10687, or the UNIFAS Act, a law I principally authored, its vision remains largely unrealized. The Commission on Audit, in its 2022 annual audit report, documented the institutional failures that compound this human cost. 548 million in overpayments to 3 SUCs, 1.8 billion in delayed TES benefit releases, 13.5 billion in unliquidated fund transfers across 4 CHED regional offices. These are failures of accountability that have direct consequences for our students. Even a cursory look at student feedback on social media reveals the painful inefficiencies in the system. Many do not even learn they are eligible for tests until after the enrollment period is closed, robbed of the chance to make an informed decision about college. And those who dare to enroll, hoping the assistance will come, are left waiting. Pasan nila ang pangamba kung paano maitatawid ang kolehiyo, gayong ang sagot ay nakasulat na sa batas. Mr. President, this is a crisis of equity and implementation, and it demands a united response. I am grateful to be joined in this effort by my fellow EDCOM 2 commissioners, Senator Bam Aquino, the principal sponsor of RA 10931, Senator Joel Villanueva, and Senator Sherwin Gatchalian, alongside the authors of the bills comprising this committee report, Senators Pia Cayetano, Bongo, Chis Escudero, Jinggoy Estrada, Risa Ontiveros, J.V. Ejercito, and Rafi Tulfo. Together with all our esteemed colleagues in this chamber, we are determined to see this through. Our counterparts in the House of Representatives are moving in lockstep with us. Allow me to present the highlights of Senate Bill 1894, through which we will institute the following reforms. First, an ironclad guarantee for the poorest. The bill mandates the secondary education completers from four-piece households shall be guaranteed a test slot, subject only to their successful admission into a CHED or TESDA recognized institution, whether public or private. Yes, this carries a significant funding requirement, but consider what the guarantee transforms. When a child from a four-piece family knows what the government has already secured the place in college for them, that knowledge alone changes everything. They know they have a future, they stay in school, they show up with a purpose so profound that it changes the trajectory of their entire life. Beyond the four-piece guarantee, the remaining test slots will be awarded strictly by per capita household income, ensuring that every peso reaches those who need it most. To institutionalize affirmative action in inclusive education, all SUCs, LUCs, and state-run TVIs will be required to develop concrete admissions criteria for learners from disadvantaged backgrounds, including persons with disabilities, indigenous peoples, and those from geographically isolated and disadvantaged areas. For accurate targeting, a single learner reference code will be adopted from secondary through tertiary education, enabling early identification of every eligible student. And crucially, the government will take a proactive approach by reaching out to potential beneficiaries before financial uncertainty makes the decision for them. Kung patas ang talino, dapat patas din ang pagkakataon. Second, ensuring support that keeps pace with rising costs. Once a student qualifies for tests, the support must arrive on time and in full. The bill mandates an efficient disbursement mechanism that delivers test grants within the term for which they are intended. Amounts will be reviewed and adjusted every 2 years to keep pace with inflation and the true cost of education. Additional support will address the specific barriers faced by disadvantaged learners. And most importantly, once a student is granted tests, that amount may not be reduced. The government's commitment to a student does not waver mid-program. Katiyakan ang kanilang lakas para magpatuloy. Third, seeing every student through to the end. For our nursing and allied health students, the journey to a degree extends far beyond the classroom. Clinical internships and related learning experiences, RLEs, are curriculum requirements. They come at a high cost. This bill expands the definition of covered school fees to include these fees, extends test benefits accordingly for students in private HEIs. These students have come too far to be stopped at the final step. dahil ang ating pangako ay hindi nagtatapos sa enrollment kundi sa graduation. Fourth, public funds demand public accountability. The bill mandates UNIFAST to establish monitoring, validation, and sanction systems to ensure the proper use of TES funds. Institutions will undergo regular quality assessments focused on academic standards, graduate outcomes, and employment rates with mandatory learner support interventions and impact evaluations. Dahil ang pondo ng taong bayan ay may katumbas na pananagutan. Lastly, our graduates must be employed. EDCOM 2 shows that the economic advantage of completing college has been shrinking, with the wage premium for a college degree falling from 141.4% in 2010 to 93.7% in 2022. This tells us that sending more students to college is only half the work. When graduates finish degrees in fields with no jobs waiting for them, we've failed them twice, once in their poverty, and again by giving them a degree that does not open doors. The bill requires proactive guidance to inform students of tertiary education options and career pathways aligned with national development needs. TES grants may be differentiated with higher support for students enrolling in priority programs that translate into real opportunities. Ang tunay na tagumpay ay ang makita ang ating mga kabataan na nakapagtapos at nakahanap ng landas tungo sa isang marangal na buhay. Mr. President, I will speak plainly about what is truly at stake here. The bill is about the kind of nation we are building. The Philippines cannot compete in the global economy if we leave the talent of our most vulnerable families untapped. Every capable young Filipino turned away from tertiary education by a broken system is a loss, not just to that student or family, but to our economy, our communities, and our future. The cost of exclusion does not stay in one generation and is inherited. But I will equally plain about this. Passing the bill is not enough. A law without a budget is a promise without meaning. We have seen what happens when we legislate generosity and appropriate scarcity. Our students pay the price. If this chamber is serious about equity, about human capital, about the future of this nation, then we must fund this law fully. The Filipino people are asking us to honor the word we put in our laws. Kung walang pondo, walang pagbabago. At ang katumbas na halaga ng tamang pagpondo sa panukalang ito ay higit na mas mababa sa kabayarang dulot ng kakulangan, hindi lamang sa mga pangarap na naudlot kundi sa kinabukasan ng ating inang bayan. Having said that, Mr. President, I respectfully submit Senate Bill 1894 for the body's consideration and urge the swift passage. Thank you.
Majority Leader.
Mr. President, before we continue with other colleagues who wish to give their co-sponsorship speeches, let us acknowledge members of the National Movement of Young Legislators from Bohol who are in the gallery right now.
Yes, we welcome the young legislators to the Senate this afternoon. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. President, next to co-sponsor the measure is Senator Joel Villanueva. I move that he be recognized.
Senator Joel Villanueva is recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Thank you to our dear Majority Leader. Ginoong Pangulo, dear colleagues, maganda at mapagpalang hapon po sa ating lahat. I rise to co-sponsor the measure amending the Universal Access to Quality Tertiary Education Act or UACTEA. As one of the authors of this proposed bill, we would like to put on record our sincerest thanks and gratitude and congratulate our dear Tita Ganda, Senator Lauren Legarda, our fellow EDCOM 2 Commissioner, for her hard work on this very important piece of legislation. We would like to also thank our dear colleagues and friends from EDCOM 2, headed by Carl Yee, who is also here with us today. Mr. President, nearly 10 years ago, we first filed what would eventually become the Free College Tuition Act. Malayo na po yung narating nitong Free College Tuition Act. But we must also admit, Mr. President, na malayo pa rin ang ating tatahakin if we are to achieve truly universal and meaningful access to tertiary education. Data from PSA revealed that as of 2024, nearly 11 million Filipino children and youth are classified as out-of-school children and youth. Of this number, Mr. President, an astounding 68.5% belongs to the 20 to 24 years old age group, and 15.6% from the 15 to 19 years old bracket. This means that a significant population of the youth consists of individuals who should be pursuing tertiary education are not attending school. These findings serve as a pressing call to review and strengthen existing education policies to ensure that every student has equitable access to learning opportunities and that no one is left behind. These numbers remind us that access is not just about tuition. It is about completion. It is about persistence. It is about ensuring that economic hardship, geographic limitations, or systemic gaps do not push our youth out of the education system. This particular measure strengthens the Universal Access to Quality Tertiary Education Act by ensuring that free education is not merely nominal, Mr. President, but truly accessible to those who need it most. This measure will, number one, clarify and expand the coverage of school fees to include essential instructional, laboratory, and clinical internship expenses. Number two, institutionalize equity and inclusion in admissions for learners from disadvantaged sectors. Third, enhance the tertiary education subsidy to cover real out-of-pocket costs such as books, transportation, lodging, and licensure requirements. And last but not the least, Mr. President, mandate periodic adjustments to subsidies to keep pace with rising education costs. Mr. President, education remains our nation's greatest equalizer. But for it to truly equalize, it must be accessible, sustainable, and responsive to the realities faced by our students. Thus, Mr. President, we encourage our dear colleagues to support the immediate passage of this measure. Maraming salamat po at pagpalain tayong lahat ng ating Panginoong Diyos.
Thank you, Senator Villanueva. Majority Leader.
Yes, Mr. President. Next to co-sponsor the measure is Senator Pia Cayetano. I move that she be recognized.
Is there an objection? Hearing none, Senator Pia Cayetano is recognized.
A minute suspension, Mr. President.
Session is suspended.
Mr. President, I rise today to co-sponsor Senate Bill number 1894 under Committee Report Number 31. This bill seeks to enhance the Universal Access to Quality Tertiary Education Act. When we enacted the Free Higher Education Law, we embraced the principle that every student's access to opportunity should not be limited by their economic circumstances. Education remains the great equalizer, the bridge that transforms potential into achievement and turns aspiration into opportunity. But experience has taught us that free education alone is not enough. For many Filipino families, especially those living at or below the poverty line, in fact, even those in the lower middle class level, the real barriers to completing tertiary education are the indirect and often hidden costs: transportation, daily subsistence, laboratory fees, clinical internships, and related learning experience fees and other school expenses. These costs quietly accumulate and quietly force many students to stop. EDCOM2's report released last January 27 shed light on pressing concerns in Philippine education. In higher education, higher attrition rates in tertiary education stand at a disturbing 39% national dropout rate. Alongside this, there has been a significant reduction in the subsidy for tertiary education among the poorest, from 74.24% in 2018 to just 30.74% in 2022. Mr. President, this representation filed Senate Bill number 26, which was considered in this committee report to strengthen the tertiary education subsidy, ensuring that government support goes beyond tuition and truly addresses the cost of completing a degree. I had the privilege of defending the budget of CHED and all the state universities and colleges for 6 years, Mr. President. When I first defended this budget in 2019, the amount for tests was at 40,000 for students going to studying in state universities and colleges, and it was at 60,000 for those studying in private higher education institutions. The reason for this is those who were enrolled in state universities and colleges did not have to pay the tuition anymore, but those going to private higher education institutions had to pay, and therefore they got a bigger tertiary education subsidy. So 40,000 if you're going to a state university and college, 60,000 if you are going to a private education institution. My thoughts, Mr. President, when I was defending this budget is, wow, we are finally going in the right direction. We are finally, truly providing a clear roadmap for our students, the ability for them to go from point A, high school graduate, to point B, college graduate. Then as the years went by, as I said, this representation defended the budget for 6 years. I learned during one of our briefings that the tertiary education subsidy for those going to state universities was cut to 20,000. So instead of receiving 40,000 a year, they receive now 20,000 a year. And for those who were in private institutions, they were also receiving 20,000 a year. So for most higher education institutions, that's already, the private institutions, that 20,000 a year would barely cover the tuition. So those coming from the lower economic bracket would no longer have extra for their transportation, for their baon, their food, for their school supplies, their books, for whatever they need for their labs. So what happens, Mr. President? At that time, I kept on insisting that we need to see the data. And eventually, the data was revealed that there were so many dropouts, Mr. President, because pinaasa mo, in fact, those who received the 60,000, the next, after a few years, di pa sila tapos, biglang na-cut to 20,000. Can you imagine that? And the latest that we have is that for private institution, this is now 27,000. So from 60, it went to 20K, and now it's a little bit higher to 27. Mr. President, this has been a very disappointing revelation for me as a senator, for me as the budget sponsor, and as an education advocate, I can only appreciate the findings of EDCOM that validate the information that we were receiving, that in fact the dropout rate has become so high. And for many, it is really a financial issue. So this bill, Mr. President, is so important because it now will address these financial gaps. The bill expands the definition of other school fees to include clinical internships and related learning experiences, fees required in nursing and allied health programs, where we have a huge shortage of graduates. This will also cover the related learning experience allowance for nursing and allied health students in private institutions. By recognizing the related learning experience and internship fees as legitimate and supportable educational costs, the bill eases the financial burden on students aspiring to serve in our healthcare system. This measure grants automatic test eligibility to graduates of secondary education from the Pantawid Pamilyang Filipino program, otherwise known as 4Ps households, upon admission to recognized higher education institutions or TechVoc institutions, ensuring continuity of government support from basic education to tertiary education. Subject to available funds, remaining test graduates shall be awarded based on household per capita income using the government office poverty assessment system or other verifiable proof of income. This makes the system more targeted, transparent, and equitable. It also ensures continued test support for the prescribed program duration subject to compliance with eligibility requirements. We recognize that not all student journeys are linear. Many working students, breadwinners, and first-generation learners face setbacks beyond their control. Our policies must reflect compassion, flexibility, and realism. On that note, Mr. President, we really hope that we can address these gaps. We want to provide a system, an environment where those who want to get a college education can get a college education. We want to be able to provide them with the support they need. My understanding, Mr. President, from CHED during the time that it was revealed that the subsidy was reduced was because there were just so many more applicants. But we cannot continue with a system that tries to resolve this issue by just spreading out the limited funds, because then no one gets to graduate, Mr. President. So we hope that with this law, we now standardize our approach to tertiary education. Let us ensure that no deserving Filipino student is forced to abandon a dream because of poverty. With this, I express my full support for this measure. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Pia Cayetano. Majority Leader.
Next to co-sponsor the measure, Mr. President, is Senator Robin Hood Padilla. I move that he be recognized.
Is there an objection? Hearing none, Senator Robin Padilla is recognized.
Maraming salamat po, Ginoong Pangulo, at sa ating pinunong mayorya. Buong puso po ako na tumatayo upang ipahayag ko po ang aking buong suporta at hiling na maging kapwa may akda at kapwa-sponsor ng Senate Bill number 1894 na nagpapalakas sa Universal Access to Quality Tertiary Education Act. Mga mahal kong kasama, malinaw po sa ating saligang batas, sa Artikulo 14, sinasabi po dyan ang mandato sa Estado upang magbigay ng edukasyon. Isipin nyo po, 1987 po yan. Ngayon po ay 2026 na. Sa report po ng EDCOM, ang atin pong edukasyon ay naaantala. Kaya napakahalaga po ng panukala na ito para masigurado po natin yung atin pong mga kabataan ay mabigyan natin po ng suporta upang yung sinasabi po sa saligang batas ay maikasatuparan. Ang edukasyon po ay hindi luho. Hindi ito pribilehyo ng iilan. Ito ay karapatan ng bawat kabataang Pilipino. Napakaraming kabataan ang may talino sipag at pangarap. Ngunit kulang ang pagkakataon o walang kakayahang magbayad ng pamasahe, aklat, tirahan at pang-araw-araw na gastusin. Kaya naman po, sinusuportahan ko ang panukalang ito na nagbibigay katiyakan na ang tulong ng pamahalaan ay makararating sa mga tunay na karapat-dapat na benepisaryo. Kasabay nito, ang pagtatiyak na ang Tertiary Education Subsidy o TES ay sapat at dumarating sa panahon ng pangangailangan. Hindi po naaantala. Mahalaga rin na kinikilala ng panukala ang dagdag na gastusin ng ating mga mag-aaral sa health program sa pamamagitan ng pagsama sa clinical internship at related learning experience fees bilang bahagi ng suportang pinansyal. Sang-ayon po ako sa pagpapatibay ng pananagutan sa paggamit ng pondo ng bayan. Ang bawat pisong inalaan para sa edukasyon ay dapat makarating sa estudyante at magbunga ng kaalaman, kasanayan at dangal na magtataguyod sa ating bansa. Kapag binigyan natin ng pagkakataon ng kabataang Pilipino, hindi lamang natin tinutupad ang kanilang mga individual na pangarap, pinagyayaman din natin ang ating ekonomiya, pinapalakas ang ating sistemang pangkalusugan at pinatitibay ang pundasyon ng pambansang kaunlaran. Kaya naman po, aking kinikilala at pinasasalamatan ang sponsor ng panukalang ito, ang ina ng kalikasan sa Senado, Senadora Loren Legarda, sa patuloy niyang pagsusulong ng mga hakbang na nagbibigay pag-asa at direksyon sa kabataan. Nais ko rin pong maging may akda at katuwang sa pagsusulong ng panukalang ito. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you, Senator Padilla. Majority Leader.
Yes, Mr. President, next to co-sponsor the measure is Senator Risa Ontiveros. I move that she be recognized.
Is there an objection? Senator Risa Ontiveros is recognized.
Salamat po, Mr. President. Mr. President, my dear colleagues, magandang hapon po. I rise to manifest my intention to co-sponsor the measure enhancing the Universal Access to Quality Tertiary Education Act. The UACTE Act has transformed millions of lives by allowing students to study tuition-free in our state and local universities and colleges, and by providing financial assistance to learners in both public and private institutions. Yet, like any major reform, its implementation has not been without challenges. As one of the authors of the proposed measure enhancing UACTE, I express my sincere appreciation to the chairperson of the Senate Committee on Higher Technical and Vocational Education, Senator Loren Legarda, for her steadfast leadership in advancing crucial reforms. These reforms prioritize the poorest and most marginalized students, streamline administrative processes, and ensure that scholars receive their subsidies on time. Since 2022, hundreds of UNIFAS CHED scholars have come to my office to report delays in their financial assistance, as well as allegations of ghost scholars and corruption. We have heard painful stories of students forced to drop out because their subsidies did not arrive when needed. Although my office has worked closely with the Commission on Higher Education to investigate these issues and recommend policy solutions, delays persist. It has become clear that we must introduce meaningful amendments to strengthen accountability, prevent the misappropriation of funds, and guarantee the timely release of subsidies. We must also institutionalize a grievance mechanism that protects students from retaliation and ensures the full funding of the Universal Access to Quality Tertiary Education program. Several state universities and colleges have raised serious concerns about the national government's failure to fully fund free higher education. This shortfall has strained their operations and in some cases forced them to reduce new enrollees. I hope the good sponsor will agree that we must secure full funding and continue investing in our youth. Access to education is a fundamental right, and it is within the spirit of this law to ensure that every Filipino has a fair opportunity to pursue higher education. Mr. President, this measure is truly transformative in expanding access to higher education, especially with the necessary reforms to strengthen its implementation. I urge my colleagues to support this proposal. These reforms are essential to ensure that more students benefit from free higher education and that no one is left behind because of delayed subsidies. I commend the good sponsor for her determination in advancing this measure to promote accountability, transparency, and efficiency. For these reasons, Mr. President, I manifest my co-sponsorship of this measure. Marami pong salamat.
Thank you, Senator Risa Hontiveros. Majority Leader.
Yes, Mr. President. Next to co-sponsor supposed to be Senator Bongo, but he's still in the lounge. So this representation would like to give my co-sponsorship speech.
Senator JB Herceto is recognized.
Mr. President, dear colleagues, good afternoon. I rise today to express my full support for the passage of this important measure that seeks to strengthen and expand our Universal Access to Quality Tertiary Education Act, Senate Bill number 1894 under Committee Report number 31. This bill recognizes a simple but powerful truth. Access to higher education should not be determined by geography, income, or circumstance. During my time as mayor of San Juan, I personally saw the value of bringing higher education closer to our communities. We established the PUP San Juan campus under our administration to give our youth a chance to pursue their dreams without having to leave our city, without the burden of additional costs, and without the emotional strain of studying far from home. Mr. President, up to this very day, this is one project that I'm most proud of as a public servant. At the local level, ramdam na ramdam mo ang epekto ng ganitong mga hakbang. You see the faces behind the policy. You meet the students who are the first in their families to enter college. You hear from parents who finally feel that education is within reach. We continue to be proud of this investment we made for the youth of San Juan. Today, PUP San Juan City Campus, which we started as a locally funded campus in 2008, is now an autonomous institution by virtue of Republic Act number 11348 and continues to grow and develop as a higher learning institution. But while access to higher education institutions can be created and sustained locally for LGUs that have the financial capacity, tulad ng ginawa natin sa San Juan during our time, sustaining quality education requires strong national support, infrastructure, faculty development, student assistance, and long-term funding mechanisms cannot rest on local governments alone. Achieving meaningful progress in this endeavor requires a strong and committed partnership between national policymaking and effective local implementation. This is why this measure is both timely and necessary. We commend the Chair of the Committee on Higher Education along with our fellow education champions in this chamber for strengthening this measure and making it truly inclusive by broadening the definition of learners from disadvantaged backgrounds. This expansion now recognizes those who face systematic barriers brought about by socioeconomic status, background, disability, and other personal circumstances. Ngayon, sinisiguro po ng panukalang ito na mas maraming kabataan na mabibigyan ng oportunidad upang makamit ang kanilang mga pangarap. Sa pamamagitan ng panukalang batas na ito, higit pang palalawakin ang saklaw ng Tertiary Education Subsidy o TES Allowance. Layunin na tintiyakin na ang mga estudyante ay makapag-focus sa kanilang pag-aaral at hindi mabahala sa paghahanap ng pondo para sa iba pang gastusin na dapat sana'y hindi hadlang sa kanilang edukasyon. by strengthening the tertiary education subsidy and refining its target and delivery. We ensure that assistance reaches those who need it most, including learners from disadvantaged backgrounds and underserved areas. In closing, Mr. President, this measure is more than reforming and enhancing our education system. It is an investment in the dreams and dignity of our young people. Kung tunay nating hangad na gawing mas pantay ang laban ng kabataan Pilipino sa mga hamon ng buhay, nararapat lamang na tiyakin natin na ang akses sa dekalidad na edukasyon ay hindi pribileyo kundi karapatan, bukas sa lahat, at may sapat na suporta at matatag na pamumuhunan para mula sa pamahalaan. I therefore express my full support for the passage of this measure para po sa ating kabataan, para sa kinabukasan, at para sa bayan. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you, Senator JB. Majority Leader.
Yes, Mr. President, next to co-sponsor the measure is Senator Bongo. I move that he be recognized.
Is there any objection? Hearing none, Senator Bongo is recognized.
Mr. President, I rise today to express my full support and to co-sponsor Senate Bill 1894, a measure that seeks to amend Republic Act number 10931, or the Universal Access to Quality Tertiary Education Act. As one of the authors, the core intention of this bill is very clear, to ensure that the tertiary education subsidy or TES allocation is granted to those students who are truly in need. Simula po nang nalagdaan po ito ni former President Rodrigo Duterte, ang Republic Act number 10931, noong 2017, naging libre po ang tuition sa ating mga state universities and colleges. Naging malaking hakbang ito tungo sa pantay na oportunidad at mas magandang kinabukasan para sa kabataang Pilipino. Milyon-milyong kabataan na po ang nag-benefit mula rito at inaasahan natin na mas marami pang matutulungan by expanding the capacity of schools. Ito po yung nag-file rin po ako ng bill na expanded free tertiary education. The passage of this law was not easy, Mr. President. Ito po yung 17th Congress. We thank the champions of this measure in the 17th Congress who made it possible, no? Including principal sponsor, Senator Bam Aquino, at mga miyembro po ng 17th Congress. Karamihan ay nandito naman po ngayon, including SP Soto, Senator Lacson, Senator Loren Legarda, Senator Mig Subiri. Salamat po sa pagpasa nito noong 17th Congress. But hindi po naging madali ang pagpasa ng batas na ito. During cabinet deliberations, there were concerns from economic managers about its fiscal impact. But we stood firm in our belief that free education is an investment in our nation's future. Balikan ko lang po, sana wala akong nakaligtaan, including Senator Risa, member din po ng 17th Congress, Senator JB Ejercito, at marami pang iba na kasamahan natin ngayon sa 20th Congress. Itong batas na ito, muntik na po itong nabito. Parati naman pong kumukontra yung mga finance managers tuwing may karagdagang gastos po ang gobyerno. Pero bilang Special Assistant to the President noon, pinaglaban natin ito at kinausap natin si Chairman Popoy de Vera na wag naman sana. Kasi meron nga pong free tuition or mga scholarships sa Davao noon na isang syudad, mas lalong importante yan sa buong Pilipinas. So pinaglaban natin, I urge CHED to defend the measure and explain its importance. In the end, nanaig po yung ating pakipaglaban. We are grateful to former President Duterte for signing into law and making free college education a reality. Si Senator, si Senator Joel Villanueva, isa rin po sa nakipaglaban nito. Even with Republic Act 10931 in place, we recognize that access to education can still be improved. Alam po yan ng ating Senate President at ating si Senator Ping Lacson dahil sila po ang nagpasa nito nung 17th Congress. Salamat po sa inyo. For many Filipino families, especially those living paycheck to paycheck, ang allowance pa rin ang pinakamabigat na pasanin. By strengthening the targeting and prioritization mechanism of tests, this measure ensures that government resources go to the right beneficiaries, the indigent, the marginalized, and the financially struggling students who would otherwise be forced to stop schooling. Under the bill, indigent students shall automatically qualify as test beneficiaries upon admission to any higher education institution. Hindi kailangang sa public na kolehiyo, pwede rin po ito sa private higher education institutions, lalo na kung wala namang available na pampublikong kolehiyo sa kanilang lugar. Malaking tulong po ito. The more we should invest sa ating education. Marami pong mga kabataan na gustong mag-aral, mga matatalinong mga Pilipino na wala pong pang-aral pero gustong-gusto pong mag-aral. This bill is important because it strengthens transparency and accountability. We want to make sure that there will be no palakasan system, walang padrino, walang koneksyon, walang impluensya. Ang tamang basihan ay pangangailangan at malinaw na criteria. Education assistance should never depend on who you know, it should depend on how much you need. Kung maayos ang implementasyon ng test, mababawasan ang pasanin ng mga magulang instead of worrying about where to get the next payment for dormitory fees or daily allowance, they can focus on supporting their children emotionally and morally. And for students, they can focus on studying, not surviving. At nagpapasalamat po ako bilang chairman ng Committee on Youth. Pangunahing advokasya po natin ang pagpapaigting ng suporta para sa edukasyon. Naniniwala po ako kung sapat ang suporta sa edukasyon, makakamit ng mga kabataang Pilipino ang magandang kinabukasan. Together, we must move to achieve a more inclusive, equitable, and responsive tertiary education system. Ito po yung expanded free tertiary education bill. O sana maisabatas na rin po ito with the support po ng mga kasamahan natin ngayon, Senator Robin Padilla, Senator Amy Marcos, Senator Marcoleta. Sana po yung maisabatas natin ito. And Senator Loren Legarda. For these reasons, I manifest my strong support and co-sponsorship of this measure. Sana po maipasa natin ito sa lalong madaling panahon at malaking tulong po ito sa ating mga estudyante. Thank you po, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Bongo, Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, Senator Jingo Estrada would like to insert his co-sponsorship speech on Senate Bill number 1894 for the record.
So inserted into the records.
And Mr. President, also for the record, we were all together when we pushed itong libreng tertiary education nung panon ni President Digong Duterte. And I just want to put on record, and I don't want to lie when I say this, is that nung pinasa po niya yan, kasi hindi pa niya napirmahan, maraming naglalabi na huwag ipasa yan. Hindi ko na babanggitin kung sino, pero may naglalabi, puro mga finance sector ng budget ng gobyerno. Finance. Sabi nila, walang perang gobyerno para sa free tertiary education. Pero pinirmahan pa rin ng presidente. Ako'y umiyak. I was on my way to the airport. I was in a van in Cebu. And when I heard that he signed it, sumigaw din po ako and napaiyak po ako. Dahil I said, wow, this is a landmark measure. I think this is a landmark measure for the presidency of then President Digong Duterte. Napaiyak po ako sa tuwa. So, because I didn't think that, alam mo, pag dinitiktahan ka po ng mga cabinet members na wag ipasa, i-veto, he stood his ground and he signed it. So,
Totoo po yun, Mr.
we have to
President.
thank the President for that, no matter what.
Senator Migs, maraming salamat. Pinaglaban mo rin po ito nung panahon ni dating Pangulong Duterte. Totoo po yun, muntik na talagang nabito yun.
Yes.
At hindi na tuloy. Isa ka sa nakipaglaban ng batas na ito. At marami pong nakikinabang ng mga estudyante. Gabi na yun, nandiyan na yung for veto.
Yes.
Tinawagan ko si Chair Popoy, sabi ko sumulat ka kay former President Duterte, inabot natin yung sulat at kinabukasan, yan na, okay naman po, nagbago po ang isip. Usually, kumukontra talaga ang mga finance manager. But you
Normal
stood
sa
your
kanila.
ground and alam ni Pangulong Duterte napakahalaga po ng edukasyon ng ating mga kabataan. Salamat rin po sa ating Majority Floor Leader, Senator Mig Zubiri.
I'll never forget that day. Kasi kasama ko po yung staff ko, na yung kaibigan ko taga Cebu, anak ni Senator Herrera, Boy Herrera, si Ernest Herrera. Nagtataka siya, bakit ako umiiyak? Sabi ko, naiyak ako sa tuwa. I had tears talaga because I really thought that ito na ang pagkakataon ng ating mga kababayan ay magkaroon na ng libreng grade school, high school, college. Wala na pong excuse. Ibig sabihin, wala na po kayong masabing na dahil sa kahirapan, di kayo makapag-eskwela. Ito na po ang pagkakataon. Di ba? Yan ang sinabi ni, maraming nagsasabi, I think even the great Jose Rizal, where education is the key to poverty, di ba? To eradicating poverty. And so, I just wanted to put that on record because I know at the time, a lot of people were lobbying to veto it, but the President still signed it. So, Mr. President, to allow our colleagues to study the measure further, I move that we suspend consideration of the same.
An objection? Suspended.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, just with the permission of Senator Marcoleta, I told him we'll just take 1 minute to amend already Senate Bill number 1823. I move that we consider Senate Bill number 1823.
An objection? Approved.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Mr. President, we're in the period of amendments. We're in the period of amendments, Mr. President. We blended already our ideas. The idea of the good Senate President pro tempore and of course, ay tuloy ko na yung kay Senator Marcoleta. Yes, Mr. President, I withdraw my motion to resume consideration. Apparently, there's a
Session
perfecting
suspended
amendment.
for 1 minute.
consider Senate Bill number 1823 for amendments, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, consideration of
Senate Bill number 1823, sir.
1823. It's in order.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Mr. President, we are in the period of amendments. May I propose our amendment? On page 1, line 7, after the word 2026, delete the comma and phrase "and every 3 years thereafter" and replace it with the following paragraphs. The term of office of those elected during this election shall start at noon on the 30th day of October 2026 and shall end at noon of June 11, 2031. Beginning 2031, for the purpose of synchronizing the Bangsamoro elections with the national and local elections, comma, the regular elections for the Bangsamoro government shall be held on the second Monday of May 2031 and every 3 years thereafter. Period. The elected officials shall assume office at noon of the 30th day following the date of their elections. Period. So
Period.
moved, Mr. President.
All right. Is that it?
May I ask for a minute suspension, Mr. President?
Session suspended.
Just for the record, the date of the second Monday of September 2026 is already in the original paragraph. That was not touched, Mr. President. So we just added this line for clarification on the synchronization of their elections, Mr. President.
All right. Subject to style.
Subject to style, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none. Amendments approved.
The second amendment, Mr. President, on page 2, lines 13 to 15, delete the entire section 5 and renumber the succeeding sections accordingly. So move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none. Approved.
That's it? Yes, sir. That is all, Mr. President. We have no other committee amendments or individual amendments.
No other committee amendments?
Or individual as well, Mr. President. We move to close the
All right.
period of amendments, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none. Period of amendments closed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I'm putting my majority leader hat back online, Mr. President. I move that we approve on second reading Senate Bill
Yes.
number 1823. So moved.
Any objection?
Subject to style. Subject to style.
Hearing none. Senate Bill 1823 under Committee Report 29 is hereby approved on second reading.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, sa aking mga kasamahan din. Salamat po. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move that we consider, where's my list so I know the exact. Yes, I move that we consider, Mr. President, proposed Senate Resolution number 307. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none. Proposed Senate Resolution 307 is considered.
May we ask the Secretary to read the title of the
Secretary will read the title of the measure without prejudice to inserting into the records the text of the said resolution.
Resolution expressing the sense of the Senate of the Philippines to protect all Filipinos against extraordinary rendition and guarantee them a reasonable time prior to their surrender by or extradition from the Philippines to seek redress from the courts in the way of legal remedies.
Mr. President, may we recognize to sponsor the measure. The sponsors are Senator Alan Peter Cayetano and Senator Marcoleta. Our distinguished minority floor leader is not feeling well today, Mr. President. So may we recognize to sponsor the measure Senator Rodante Marcoleta, Mr. President.
Senator Dante Marcoleta is recognized to sponsor the resolution.
Maraming salamat, Mr. President. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, I rise today to sponsor the proposed Senate Resolution number 307, expressing the sense of the Senate to protect all Filipinos against extraordinary rendition and guarantee them a reasonable time prior to their surrender or by extradition from the Philippines to seek redress from the courts and avail of legal remedies. At its core, the resolution reaffirms what our Constitution already commands, that sovereignty and due process must never be subordinated to expediency, pressure, convenience, more so political machinations. The rule of law must remain the bedrock of any functioning democracy. As the esteemed political philosopher John Adams once said, a republic is a government of laws, not of men. As is stated in the resolution, the 1987 Constitution guarantees that in all criminal prosecutions, an accused shall be presumed innocent until the contrary is proved, and that no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. Due process is not a matter of administrative grace, nor can it be reduced to a timetable dictated by urgency, pressure, or political climate. It is a fundamental restraint on power. It affirms that the Philippines, while a responsible member of the international community, remains first and foremost a sovereign state, governed by its constitution. But these principles remain mere words and aspirations, Mr. President, if the authorities in charge, especially in the executive, are the very ones to abandon these fundamental doctrines. Ang tunay na tanong dito, Mr. President, ay simple ngunit mahalaga. May karapatan ba ang bawat Pilipino sa sapat na panahon upang ipagtanggol ang kanilang sarili sa hukuman? Because once surrender is executed, the opportunity for meaningful judicial intervention may become illusory. Courts cannot protect rights retroactively after the person is already beyond reach. Ang hinihingi lang naman natin, Mr. President, ay makatarungan at makatwiran, sapat na panahon upang makalapit sa hukuman at sapat na pagkakataon upang maipagtanggol ang sarili. This is not obstruction, Mr. President. This is not delay for delay's sake. This is the minimum requirement of constitutional fairness. Justice to be legitimate must be both firm and fair. And fairness demands that before the irreversible act of surrender, the Filipino citizen, any Filipino citizen, be allowed to invoke the protection of Philippine courts. This is not a defiance of international law, Mr. President. This is fidelity to the Constitution. Mr. President, the issue before us transcends personalities. It is not solely about former President Rodrigo Duterte, nor is it limited to the present controversy involving the International Criminal Court. What is truly at stake is the enduring protection of every Filipino, his constitutional rights whenever the tentacles of international prosecution touch our domestic sovereignty. This resolution does not obstruct justice. It does not shield wrongdoing. It simply demands that prior to surrender or extradition, a Filipino be given reasonable time to access the courts. Is this not the very essence of due process, Mr. President? Even under our extradition laws involving bilateral treaties, we do not simply hand over individuals overnight. There are hearings, there are remedies, there is judicial scrutiny. Why should surrender to an international tribunal be treated with less caution than extradition to another state? We have on record an existing Article 98 agreement between the Philippines and the United States, entered into force in 2003. This agreement is not obscure, nor it is accidental. It reflects a deliberate policy choice that the surrender of nationals, officials, and personnel to international tribunals of the U.S. is not automatic but conditioned upon state consent and the primacy of domestic jurisdiction. Ginoong Pangulo, sa kontratang ito na pinirmahan natin sa pagitan ng ating bansa at ng Estados Unidos, sa pamagitan ng note verbal, at ito'y nagkaroon ng visa noong 2003, ginagarantiya natin na sino mang American national, official o employee, kahit sino sila na nandito sa ating bansa, ay hindi natin ibibigay automatic sa ICC o kauring mga tribunal kung walang consent ang Amerika. Dito lamang, Mr. President, masusukat natin ang pagpapahalaga natin sa karapatan ng isang mamamayan, Pilipino man o hindi. Kung pwede nating proteksyonan ang mga banyaga na nakatira sa ating bansa at tayo gumarantya sa pamagitan ng ating pakikipagkontrata sa kanila, di ba mas lalong bigyan natin ang pagpapahalaga ang sarili nating mamamayan, Mr. President? Mr. President, the Philippines is willing and able to prosecute crimes for humanity. First, it has criminalized crimes against humanity under Republic Act 9851. The Supreme Court has designated special courts to try cases under this law. It has designed new writs to facilitate investigation, prosecution, such as the writ of amparo and the protection of witnesses and victims. There are government agencies funded and manned to investigate crimes under this law. Isinama pa dito, Ginoong Pangulo, ang Human Rights Commission, ang Department of Justice, at lahat ng mga hukom ay binibigyan po ng panahon na kakailangan nila mag-training sila upang sa ganon maisagawa ang pagpapatupad ng batas na ito na ginawa mismo ng ating legislature. Our willingness and preparedness to prosecute crimes against humanity was recently expressed by the Philippine Permanent Mission to the United Nations in its commentary dated April 12, 2023 on the revision of the definition of crimes against humanity. Mr. President, our government reiterated that under our law, our national law, the Philippines shall exercise jurisdiction over persons, whether military or civilian, suspected or accused, or other crimes against humanity, regardless of where the crime is committed, provided any of the following conditions is met. The accused is our citizen. The accused, regardless of citizenship or residence, is present in the Philippines, and the accused has committed the said crime against a Filipino citizen. Our government also agreed to competent authorities that its competent authorities shall proceed to investigate whenever there is reasonable ground to believe that acts constituting crimes against humanity have been committed in any territory under its jurisdiction. This is a clear assertion of the principle of complementarity that should rule out an extraordinary rendition of a Filipino citizen to the ICC. Mr. President, let me emphasize that our law, Republic Act 9851, acquires primary jurisdiction to crimes against humanity. Preparado po tayo. The last time I checked, the Supreme Court has not made any declaration that it is unwilling, or it is incapable, or it is unable to hear cases within our country. As a matter of fact, the law is prepared, and all the instrumentalities and agencies concerned in the prosecution and litigation of cases against humanity and similar crimes. Preparado po ang ating bansa, ang ating korte, even our prosecutor services. Preparado. Sa makatwid, the primary jurisdiction rests in our country. Complementarity will only come in kung wala na po tayong kakayahan. na isagawa ang nararapat para akusahan, ilitigate ang lahat ng mga kasong sinasaad sa ating batas. So paano po papasok? Bakit po bigla na lamang nakukunin halimbawa ang isang mamamayan natin nang hindi natin ginagawa ang katungkulan sa ilalim ng batas na ginawa natin? Republic Act 9851 has not been repealed so far, Mr. President. It is active. Bakit hindi po ginagamit ito? Bakit meron pong potential threat na dalawa sa ating mga kasama sa institusyong ito, Mr. President? Kaya nga po ang isa rito ay hindi nakapagsasagawa ng kanyang tungkulin sapagkat may dalang takot po dahil magsasagawa ng extrajudicial rendition ang isang korte na kung saan ang kanyang jurisdiction na hindi na po natin kinikilala, Mr. President. Hindi na po tayo member ng Rome Statute. Pero nakaabang parang sword of Damocles hanging on the heads dito sa mga kasama natin sa chamber na ito, Mr. President. Kung halimbawa, Mr. President, inadapt natin ang resolution na ito, ano ang susunod na hakbang, Mr. President? Halimbawa, nag-issue ng warrant of arrest ang ICC sa isa sa kasama natin dito sa chamber na ito. Ano ang magagawa ng isang resolution, Mr. President? Ang resolution ba will have the effect of notifying all agencies concerned, like the PNP or the DOJ, na magdahan-dahan kayo. Huwag kayong magdalos-dalos. Huwag kayong padalos-dalos kasi nagsalita na ang Senado. The sense of the Senate has been declared na ayaw natin, na kailangang panagutan muna ang ating saligang batas, ang umiiral na batas tungkol dito, na ang primary jurisdiction ay ating bansa. Papasok lamang ang ICC o kung sino man under the doctrine of complementarity. Hindi kailanman papasok, Mr. President, dahil nga ang ating mga hukuman, ang ating mga piskalya ay handa at willing and able to do their functions. So paano magkakaroon ng puwang na mag-i-issue ang isang banyagang tribunal at pagkatapos ay hindi natin kikilalanin ang sariling batas na tayo mismo ang gumawa, Mr. President? Ito po ang, siguro pwede natin sabing, the ironies of all ironies. Tayo na po ang gumawa ng batas para parusahan natin ang sino man, national man natin o hindi national na residente sa ating bansa. Pagkatapos ay papasok ang isang banyagang tribunal na wala ng karapatan sapagkat wala na nga tayo sa Rome Statute. Ito ang mga katanungan, Mr. President, na dapat magkaroon po ng kasagutan sa lalong madaling panahon. Nararamdaman ko po ang nararamdaman ng mga kasama natin. Huwag na po tayong magbulag-bulagan, Mr. President. Alam natin, kung tayo po ang nasa kanilang kalagayan, nakikita rin po siguro natin ang takot na namamayani sa ating kalooban. Hindi po maganda yon, Mr. President. Kaya po kailangan nating sigurong pagsikapan, ayusin ang mga bagay na may kinalaman sa problemang ito para sa ganon matiwasay nating magawa ang ating mga gawain at sagutin sa ating mamayan. Maraming salamat po, Mr. President.
Majority Leader.
Sino gusto mag-sponsor? May recognize our distinguished colleague, Mr. President, Senator Amy Marcos.
Senator Amy Marcos is recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, Majority Leader. Esteemed colleagues of the Philippine Senate, good afternoon. I rise to co-sponsor with Senator Marcoleta and Senator Cayetano the proposed Senate Resolution 307 entitled Resolution Expressing the Sense of the Senate of the Philippines to Protect All Filipinos Against Extraordinary Rendition and Guarantee them a reasonable time prior to their surrender by or extradition from the Philippines to seek redress from the courts and avail of legal remedies. Ang hustisya na ipinapataw ng dayuhan ay hindi hustisya. Ito ang pagpapahiya. Ito ay pang-aalipin. At mga kababayan ko, hindi tayo alipin. Tayo ay Pilipino. At kung Pilipino ka, hindi ka susuko at hindi mo isusuko ang kapwa mong Pilipino, hindi mo isusuko ang iyong pagiging Pilipino. Almost 1 year ago, on that fateful day of 11 March 2025, the Philippine government, acting in coordination with the International Criminal Court, a tribunal whose jurisdiction the Philippines has long and consistently denied, caused the arrest of former President Rodrigo Roa Duterte without a warrant issued by any Philippine court. Not content with effecting that arrest, absent any local judicial authority, the government then transported him to The Hague, thereby completing what can only be described as an extrajudicial rendition. Ganito ang nangyari kay Rodrigo Duterte sa kamay ng mga dayuhan na para bang wala siyang sariling bayan, na para bang wala tayong kakayahang humusga sa sarili nating bansa. Mga kababayan, kung may anak kang nasa panganib, ipapasa mo ba siya sa kamay ng iba? Kung may kaibigan kang pinararatangan, hahayaan mo bang ibang tao ang humusga sa kanya habang nakatali ang kanyang kamay at wala siyang laban? Kung ang iyong ama, matanda na at may sakit, ay kinakaladkad palabas ng inyong sariling tahanan, manonood ka na lang ba at walang gagawin? Today, we are confronted with the prospect that the same course of action may once again be undertaken. If we are to remain faithful to our oath to preserve and defend the Constitution, we cannot allow this to pass without clarity, without principle, without constitutional fidelity. During the 19th Congress, your Senate Committee on Foreign Relations conducted extensive hearings into the executive's actions. From the testimony of respected and constitutional authorities, including retired Supreme Court Justice Adolfo Ascuna, a member and author of the 1987 Constitutional Commission, and the constitutional law scholar, Attorney Alexis Medina, two propositions emerged with unmistakable clarity. First, the judicial intervention by Philippine courts is indispensable before the government may arrest a Filipino citizen within our territory and transport him to another jurisdiction. Second, any Filipino citizen arrested in this country without local judicial proceedings retains the right to seek redress before Philippine courts. These are not technicalities. These are constitutional imperatives repeated time and again. And no degree of legal engineering, of semantic maneuvering, or strained interpretation should be permitted to circumvent these constitutional guarantees. During the committee hearing on the 20th of March 2025, Attorney Medina clarified that the term surrender under Section 17 of RA 9851 applies only in two instances. First, when the person to be arrested has already voluntarily surrendered to the custody of the national government, thereby negating the need for extradition proceedings. And second, the person to be arrested is an alien, in which case what will be involved is only a deportation process which does not involve any court proceedings at all. Outside of these very narrowly defined instances, the arrest and transfer of a person to a foreign jurisdiction without local court proceedings would not be sanctioned by our Constitution. For our 1987 Constitution is unequivocal Article 3, Section 2 of the Bill of Rights provides, no warrant of arrest shall issue except upon probable cause to be personally determined by the judge after determination under oath or affirmation of the complainant and the witnesses he may produce. The judge contemplated by the Constitution can only be a Philippine judge. Article 8, Section 1 vests judicial power in one single Supreme Court and in such lower courts as may be established by law. The International Criminal Court is not such lower court established by Philippine law. For one, no Philippine statute created the ICC. For another, if the ICC were indeed a lower court, then it clearly means that the Supreme Court can reverse or nullify its decisions and even discipline its judges. The Supreme Court can do neither. Moreover, assuming arguendo that the ICC warrant could be issued domestically without prior judicial action, Article 59(2) of the Rome Statute itself requires that the arrested person be brought promptly before the competent judicial authority of the custodial state. Paragraph 3 further grants the person the right to apply for interim relief before that self-same authority. As Justice Escuna testified during the committee hearing of 10 April 2025, the failure of Philippine authorities to bring the arrested individual before the local courts constitute a violation of Article 59. And as emphasized within our own legal system, there will be consequences for that violation. There is therefore no gray area whatsoever here, no ambiguity, no room for creative interpretation, much less construction. Only Philippine courts may issue a constitutionally valid warrant of arrest enforceable within our jurisdiction, and any person deprived of liberty within Philippine territory without such judicial authority has the right to seek redress before our courts, whether that person be a private citizen, a former president, or a senator. To insist otherwise would reduce the guarantees of our Bill of Rights to mere parchment and would erode the judicial power solemnly vested by the Constitution upon the Philippine judiciary alone. Sabi nila, batas ang dapat manaig. Tama, the law must prevail. But whose law? Our law or theirs? Since when did the Philippines become a province of The Hague? Tayo ba ay isang bansa na may sariling batas? O isa na lang tayong alipin na naghihintay ng utos? Kung kaya nilang gawin ito sa isang dating Pangulo, kaya rin nilang gawin ito sa sino man sa atin. If they can march into our homes, grab hold of our family, and drag them before their courts, when will they stop? And how will they be stopped from doing it again? What stops them from doing it to you, to me, to any one of us? For these reasons, I respectfully and urgently endorse the immediate adoption of our Resolution 307. Thank you and good day to all my colleagues. Thank you.
Salamat po sa good gentlewoman from Ilocos Norte. Next to sponsor the resolution, Mr. President, Senator Jinggoy Estrada.
Senator Jinggoy Estrada is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, please allow this representation to co-sponsor proposed Senate Resolution number 307, expressing the sense of the Senate of the Philippines to protect all Filipinos against extraordinary rendition and guarantee them a reasonable time prior to their surrender or extradition from the Philippines to seek redress from the local courts in avail of legal remedies. The most fundamental principle of the 1987 Philippine Constitution, as contained in the Bill of Rights, is very clear. No person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of the law, nor shall any person be denied the equal protection of the laws. Malinaw din ang nakasaad sa ating saligang batas na ang bawat akusado ay may likas na karapatan sa due process at sa presumption of innocence hanggang mapatunayan kung meron nga silang pagkakasala sa batas. Hindi natin maaaring isantabi ang ating sariling mga korte at ang soberanya ng ating bansa sa harap ng anumang international na proseso. Filipinos should be tried in competent Philippine courts. Karapatan nilang madinig ang kanilang panig kahit ano pa ang inaakusa sa kanila. Naniniwala ako na patuloy na gumagana at matibay pa rin ang pundasyon ng ating justice system at matitiyak na dadaan sa tamang proseso ang lahat, alinsunod sa mga umiiral na batas. Ang resolusyong ito ay hindi lamang para sa mga kasamahan nating senador na pinangalanan sa mga kaso sa ICC, kundi para sa lahat ng Filipino na maaaring maharap sa ganitong sitwasyon. Ang bawat mamamayan ay dapat bigyan ng pagkakataon upang makapaghain ng legal na remedyo sa ating mga lokal na hukuman bago sila isuko o i-extradite. Maraming salamat po, Ginoong Pangulo.
Majority Leader.
Salamat po sa good gentleman mula sa San Juan. Next to co-sponsor, proposed Senate Resolution 307, Mr. President, Senator Christopher Bongo.
Senator Christopher Bongo is recognized.
Mr. President, esteemed colleagues, I rise to express my support and to co-sponsor the Senate resolution expressing the sense of the Senate to protect all Filipinos against extraordinary rendition and guarantee them a reasonable time prior to their surrender by or extradition from the Philippines to seek redress from the courts and avail of legal remedies. The very core of this resolution is a simple but powerful principle. No Filipino should be deprived of liberty without due process of law. This is not merely a legal or procedural technicality, but a constitutional guarantee enshrined in our fundamental law. Mr. President, let me address this matter with full transparency. I have always believed in the due process of the law. This resolution may appear to intersect with my personal circumstances, and I do not shy away from that reality. But precisely because of that reality, I speak today and support this resolution not merely as a legislator, but as a Filipino who believes deeply in the protections guaranteed by our Constitution. This resolution is not crafted to serve any individual. It is not a shield for the powerful, nor it is a refuge for the guilty. It is a reaffirmation that every Filipino, ordinary citizen or public official, karaniwang mamamayan man o nasa pwesto, stands equal before the law under its protection. Wala naman sigurong Pilipino ang ayaw magtrabaho o umiwas sa tungkulin. Sino bang ayaw magtrabaho? Ang gusto lang natin ay makasiguro na ang bawat Pilipino ay protektado at lahat ay dumaan sa due process. Ako po mismo, tinatanong nila. Ako naman po yung nagtatrabaho, Lunes hanggang Linggo po. At hindi ko po matiis na nakaupo lamang dito sa malamig na opisina habang mga kababayan natin nangangailangan po ng tulong. At yan naman po ang aking sinumpaang tungkulin. Kahit sang sulok kayo ng Pilipinas, bagyo, baha, putok ng bulkan, sunog, lindol, pinupuntahan ko lang lahat mga lugar na yan. Basta kaya lang po ng aking katawan at panahon. Dahil bisyo ko po magserbisyo sa ating mga kababayang Pilipino at naniniwala po ako na ang serbisyo po sa tao ay serbisyo po yan sa Panginoong Diyos. At kahit po yung isa kong kasamahan dito sa Senado, na si Senator Bato de la Rosa, ay isa rin po sa mga masisipag nating senador na gusto rin pong makapagtrabaho lang po ng maayos. Further, Mr. President, as we speak today, this issue goes beyond the proceedings before the International Criminal Court. This is not merely about one case or one individual. The principle at stake applies to any foreign entity, tribunal, or international body that seeks to exercise jurisdiction over a Filipino citizen. Hindi lamang po ito nakapaloob sa proceedings ng ICC. The same standard must apply to any foreign tribunal or authority issuing orders that may result in the transfer of a Filipino to another country for investigation or prosecution. Before any Filipino is brought outside our jurisdiction and subjected to foreign processes, there must be first strict compliance with our Constitution, our laws, and the fundamental requirement of due process. Bakit natin papayagan na manghimasok ang foreign tribunal without passing through local courts? Huwag naman sana po tayong pumayag ng ganon. Last year, the Supreme Court released rules on extradition proceedings. Naglabas po sila last year. I think naging effectivity noon ay November 10. However, may mga nagsasabi na applicable lang po ito sa state-to-state request for extradition. Kaya hanggang ngayon, parang may gray area po dyan. Sana po'y once and for all, masettle na po ito ng Supreme Court, Mr. President. Co-equal branches nga po ang tawag sa atin dito. Executive, legislative, and judiciary. At posibleng kung sakali ay ang executive ang mag-i-implement. At posibleng sakali, legislative po ang matatamaan. So once and for all, sana po matuldukan na po ito ng judiciary. Sila naman po ang final arbiter at makakapag-desisyon yan. Mr. President, I reiterate that this resolution does not obstruct justice. It strengthens it. It does not defy international cooperation. It ensures that such cooperation operates within constitutional bounds. The Philippines can honor its international obligations whilst still safeguarding the fundamental rights of its people. At the end of the day, I still believe that the true test of our commitment to justice is how we treat the favored. But, ulitin ko lang po, at the end of the day, I still believe that the true test of our commitment to justice is not how we treat the favored, but how we protect the rights of those under accusation. Nakikiusap po ako sa mga kasamahan natin dito sa Senado, proteksyonan po natin ang ating ang institusyon. And I urge this chamber to stand firm in defense of due process and to adopt this resolution in the name of constitutional fidelity and equal protection for all. Maraming salamat po, Mr. President.
Majority Leader.
Maraming salamat din po, Mr. President, sa good gentleman mula sa Davao. Mr. President, Senator Robin Hood Padilla wishes that his co-sponsorship speech for the resolution be inserted for the record. Oh, I'm so sorry.
If there is no objection, it's so inserted into the records.
Just to make of record, Mr. President, there was an indication from the good gentleman mula po sa Camarines Norte na baka mas gusto nilang ma-deliver yung kanilang co-sponsorship speech. I withdraw my earlier motion.
Then
Mr.
we recognize
President.
Senator Robin Padilla.
Salamat po, Mr.
Maraming
President.
salamat po, Ginoong Pangulo, at sa ating pinunong mayoriya, sa ating pong kasama, Senator Risa Ontiveros. Ako po naman ay gusto ko lamang pong magbigay ng maiksing manifestasyon sapagkat napakabigat po para sa akin. Narinig ko na po ang mga sinabi ng aking kaibigan, Senator Marcoleta at Senator Amy Marcos, Senator Jingo Estrada, Senator Bongo. Nagbigay po sila ng mga halimbawa ng usaping legal. Ang akin pong punto ay usapin ng patungkol sa ating pagmamahal sa ating kalayaan at kasarinlan, kasaysayan. Napakasakit po para sa atin, mga Pilipino, na namnamin natin na meron po tayong mga kababayan na nasa ibang bansa at doon dumadaan sa isang paglilitis. Nililitis ng dayuhan. Napakasakit pong mapanood. Hindi ko nga kayang panoorin na meron isang huwes, merong mga abogadong prosecutor, iba't ibang lahi, na kababayan natin ang gusto nilang bigyan ng paghuhusga. Ang akin pong hiling, ako naman isang ayon, meron tayong mga treaties. Totoo po yan. Bahagi tayo ng pandaigdigang komunidad. Ngunit ang pakikipagtulungan sa ibang bansa ay hindi dapat nangangahulugan ng pagsuko ng ating sariling jurisdiksyon at pagtalikod po sa ating mga korte. Dahil ang mga korte na yan, yan ang simbolo ng ating kalayaan eh. Pinaglaban po yan ng ating mga bayani. At tayo nandito, tayo po'y may Senado ngayon sapagkat ipinaglaban po ng ating mga bayani yung ating kalayaan na husgahan ang ating mga sarili. Kaya, pakiusap ko sa aking mga kasama, bagamat wala silang karamihan ngayon dito, alam ko naman na nanonood sila. Ang iba naman ay nakausap ko na at sila ay naniniwala na dapat ay dumaan sa korte natin ang sino man, hindi lamang po mga kasama natin dito, kundi lahat ng mga Pilipino na kapag gustong dalhin sa ibang bansa ay dumaan muna sa korte natin. Ako'y nakikiusap sa ating mga kasama na magnilay-nilay. Kung meron po tayo dapat na paniwalaang maghuhusga sa mga kasama natin, ay dapat ay Pilipino rin. Huwag po tayong pumayag na isang dayuhan muli ang magmukhang mas mataas sa atin. Dahil yan po ay hindi papayag ang ating mga bayani sapagkat ipinaglaban nila yan na tayo'y kapantay ng mga dayuhan. Hindi tayo kailanman sasailalim sa kanilang sinasabing katalinuhan o sa kanilang panghuhusga. Kaya po mga kasama, ang sinasabi po natin, bago po sana natin isuko ang isang Pilipino sa ibang jurisdiction, tiyakin muna po natin na mabigyan siya ng sapat na panahon at pagkakataon upang dumulog sa sariling korte ng kanyang bayan. Maraming salamat po, Ginoong Pangulo.
Majority Leader.
Maraming salamat, Mahal na Pangulo. With that, there will be one more sponsor, or there will be few of our colleagues will sponsor the measure, like our distinguished Minority Floor Leader, but he requested if he can sponsor it tomorrow, Mr. President. So with that, I move to suspend consideration of the same. Of the measure.
Objection. Hearing na consideration of the measure suspended.
Mr. President, I move to change the primary. We'll just do some housekeeping, Mr. President. I move that we change the primary committee referral of Senate Bill number 1544 an act renewing another 25 years franchise granted to Central Mindanao University from the Committee on Rules to the Committee on Public Services. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, Committee on Public Services. Is,
Thank you very much, Mr. President.
So transferred. Yep.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Mr. President, without no other matters to take up, I move that we adjourn the session until 3 o'clock in the afternoon of Wednesday, February 25, 2026. Thank you very
Hearing
much.
no objection, the session is adjourned until 3 o'clock in the afternoon of Wednesday, February 25, 2026.